Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Rishi Sunak calls for a return to power sharing in Northern Ireland as he marks 25 years since the Good Friday Agreement.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Easter Monday, the 10th of April. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen Dixon and Ellie Costello.
Here's what's leading the news for you this morning, and the Prime Minister has pledged a better future for Northern Ireland as he commemorated 25 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. It comes ahead of a visit by President Biden tomorrow.
The biggest ever rise in state pension is set to take effect today. The record-breaking 10.1% increase will still not keep pace with inflation, which unexpectedly rose to 10.4% last month.
The route for the King's coronation has been revealed, with the procession about a quarter of the length of the one taken by the Queen in 1953. The King and Queen consort will travel in the Diamond Jubilee State Coach, which features air conditioning, electric windows and even up-to-date suspension.
Easter travel chaos will continue today, with 2.3 million journeys being taken on our roads. That's according to the RAC. National rail disruption is also expected due to bank holiday weekend engineering works.
Well, if you're planning on staying at home or trying to get home, either which way, let us know, and let us know what you think about all this, the latest we're getting on the coronation as well. Just send us an email, if you so choose, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Well, our main news this morning, and Rishi Sunak has called for a return to power sharing in Stormont as soon as possible, as he marks 25 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement.
Yes, the Prime Minister underlined that the defining message of the landmark deal is compromise and urged parties in Northern Ireland to work together for a better future.
Well, it comes as the PM prepares to meet with President Biden tomorrow evening as he steps off Air Force One in Belfast. Our Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie has more.
There's also very strong community intelligence specifically coming forward in respect of Monday's events in Derry, Londonderry, and a real concern that there may be attempts to draw police in to serious public disorder and to use that then as a platform to launch terrorist attacks on police as well. So going into our operation, that's something that is very clearly right at the forefront of my mind.
PSNI Assistant Chief Constable Bobby Singleton briefs the press as to the terrorist threat that faces his officers later today. And the US President Joe Biden will now only attend one event in Belfast.
I generally think it is absolutely not a snub. I'm delighted he's coming to Northern Ireland, and I'm absolutely sure he'll be pleased with the progress that he will see Northern Ireland's made over the last 25 years.
25 years ago, Belfast was a very different place. Never mind the lack of infrastructure, it was more dangerous to live here than it was in Beirut. The Good Friday Agreement brought many changes, most of them along local governance, policing and community projects. But who did it leave behind?
So the young men need to feel wanted. They need to be made wanted. This will keep them out of criminality, keep them out of trouble. They will be taken away from drugs. The government should be setting up different liaison groups and bringing the young men forward out of these situations that they find themselves in.
Boxing coach Ian McSorley has been working alongside young men from the loyalist Sandy Row area of South Belfast. These men don't appear to fit in the academic route.
So the government needs to step in here. Obviously, what has went on in the past hasn't worked. There needs to be new initiatives for encouragement and get them out of the current situation that they are in.
Brian Caskey is from the other side of Belfast, a project worker that also encourages those young men in cross-community groups.
I think it's just people took the eye off the ball in relation to what the needs are for these communities. I felt that there was a lack of a strategic plan in relation to where the area was going to go over maybe the next 10 or 15 years. That doesn't exist. So as a result of that, there maybe is a wee bit of limbo and lack of investment, a lot of strategic planning, and I think that's where it's gone wrong. And then a lot of us are left then to work with the young people and try and give them those opportunities that maybe we thought they would already exist. So I think it's a lack of investment, lack of clear strategic direction.
Ray is the chairman of Limestone United, that bridges both sides of the peace walls.
So the only way forward is to educate the young ones, get them into politics. It's our future, not ours. We've had ours.
Dougie Beattie, GB News, Belfast.
Well, for joining us for more on this is political correspondent for The Spectator, James Heal. Good morning to you, James. Great to have you with us. So this is a significant anniversary, but can't be denied it is overshadowed, really, by the current tensions that are taking place in Northern Ireland.
Yes, I mean, this is the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, and it's partly about looking back, celebrating the progress that Northern Ireland has made in sort of keeping the peace since the Troubles, which killed 3,500 people. But, of course, it's also about looking forward to the future as well. And I think, obviously, you look at the fact the executive hasn't been sitting since last February 2022, hasn't sat for sort of 40% of its history as well. And so this is basically about trying to incentivise the return of power sharing at Stormont as well by talking about investment and the potential economic benefits of working together. I
mean, the Prime Minister's talking about the benefits of compromise. Well, that's a bit of a no-brainer, but that's where things aren't happening.
Yes, quite, and that's why he's talking about, he's trying to move the conversation on something he's very comfortable about, which is talking about investment. So he's proposed having this sort of big summit in September. I think there's also the President Biden's visit is trying to sort of coincide and trying to incentivise the idea that if you work together and try to find political solutions, there could be some kind of American investment there, and that is really kind of the big attraction of this week. So you look at the history of Northern Ireland, it's all trying to get about difficult parties back together in the room, and that's what really this week's all about.
Let's talk about comments from Chris Heaton-Harris there. We heard in Dougie Beattie's report. He's the Northern Ireland Secretary. He was responding to criticism that President Biden's trip is a snub, and that's because it's a much shorter trip than originally planned, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, this is criticism made in some quarters, but I think that President Biden's own personal and sort of political dedication to the question of Northern Ireland and Ireland really can't be any doubt. I mean, he's coming over tomorrow night and he's going to be visiting family at the end of the week on Friday. And you look at his actions in office, you know, I was listening to Peter Carl, the Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary, last night, and he was saying that, you know, talking to President Biden, he is so up on the detail about actually what's happening day by day in terms of what's going on in Northern Ireland. And you look at, for instance, his appointment of Joe Kennedy III as a special envoy to Northern Ireland to champion the economic benefits of collaboration. I'm not sure it can really be seen in that light as Joe Biden personally snubbing Northern Ireland.
Yeah, look, we know the Prime Minister is going to be having talks with Leo Varadkar, the Taoiseach. Is that going to make any... I mean, do those sort of conversations make any significant difference when actually, in a sense, what you need to be doing is talking to the DUP to get them back into Stormont.
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation of many moving parts, and I think that it's actually about trying to move the conversation on from a few years ago, when I think under Boris Johnson relations were quite difficult and more characterised by distrust. So I think it's partly about talking to Republican leaders in the Republic of Ireland, but also about working with the DUP. And what's interesting, obviously, is that the DUP have come out and criticised Rishi Sunak's Stormont break, but also I think that if you look at the kind of sort of behind the scenes of what's going on, I think there could be potential for a deal later this year. We haven't been able to get the Stormont up and running in time for the Good Friday Agreement anniversary, but there is some hoping within Whitehall that there could be something maybe later this year.
Do you think we'll expect anything significant in terms of comment from Joe Biden on Tuesday? We, as you touched upon, this is a very personal trip for him. He has been very outspoken about how he feels about Brexit and how he feels about a divided Ireland.
He has, but I think that this is much more a spirit of celebration. I think everyone does want to, move the conversation on and look to the future. But I think you can look at how far Northern Ireland has come in that 25 years, and so I think that will be very much more a celebration, perhaps, than a kind of inquest into what's gone wrong.
OK, James, good to see you.
Thank
as
you very
always.
much.
Catch up with you a little bit later on. Now, a record state pension increase comes into force today. You're rubbing your hands together. It's going up by 10.1%. You're too young to be rubbing your hands together for that one.
But I wonder what it'll be like when I get there.
I don't think there'll be one.
Do you not?
No.
Oh dear, that was the question that we're going to ask today, I think. Well, despite the major jump worth twice as much as the average pay rise, it will still fall behind inflation, which unexpectedly rose to 10.4% last month.
Well, let's talk to the chief economic advisor for the Centre for Economic and Business Research, Vicky Price. Good morning to you, Vicky. It's all down to the triple lock, of course, which a lot of people were fearing wouldn't happen. What sort of difference is this going to make? I mean, not to pensioners particularly, it's money in the pockets, but to actually our economy.
Well, it's good news for pensioners. We better say that as quickly as we possibly can, because, of course, they didn't get very much of an increase last year. The triple lock generally works as follows. Pensioners get the increase, the highest increase that they can from three things: either the consumer price index or the average earnings, how much they've risen over a period, which is predetermined, or if those two are below 2.5%, they get 2.5% increase. So last year they should have got a very substantial increase because earnings were rising very fast after COVID, when of course earnings fell during that period, but they didn't. They only got the 2.5% instead of maybe 8 or 9% they would have got otherwise. So this is up to a point, sort of going back to where we were, but a bit of a compensation, because by comparison to what's going on across the economy, particularly in the public sector, pay rises have not kept in line with inflation, whereas at least for pensioners this year, they are getting the pay rise which is linked directly to what the inflation was back in September, which was, as you rightly say, 10.1%. It's gone up a little bit since. It's coming down a little bit. Hopefully, will be coming down pretty soon as well. But by comparison to the average worker, who is getting maybe 6%, then pensioners are doing relatively well, but from a very low base, I have to say.
But, I mean, especially for people on low incomes, this is going to make a huge difference, isn't it? Because the cost of food and energy in the past year or so has gone up dramatically.
You're absolutely right. And people at the lower end of the pay scale, which is exactly where pensioners are, they may have houses and therefore assets, but they can't necessarily liquidate them sort of very quickly and be able to spend them. So the day-to-day income that they have is much below the average across the economy. So the pension is just over £10,000 a year. Pensioners' incomes are about £12,700 or thereabouts, if you look at anything else that they earn. And it is that category of households which tends to spend most on food and energy out of whatever they have to spend every month. And those are the items that have gone up significantly over the past year and a bit. So that's an issue for them. And that is, I think, probably why there had been serious concern if those increases weren't going to happen, by which I mean the benefit to pensioners, then we would have had loads of them falling into poverty. And that obviously would have had an impact both on them, but also, of course, on the economy.
There's a stealth tax issue here, though. I mean, we call it a stealth tax because the thresholds for when we start to pay tax and pay higher rates of tax and all that haven't actually changed. I mean, the current sort of pension, the average pension of 12,720 or whatever it is basically on that line of personal allowance, isn't it? So a 10% rise may actually push some people into a tax bracket.
That's absolutely true. I think for some pensioners, they may have to start paying tax for the first time. I mean, it is true that a number of them had been doing so already because they have occupational pension schemes as well that they can rely on. And that is, of course, that would mean that they would be paying tax probably already. But for many, this increase may well push them into that category. In addition, though, pensioners are getting support with energy costs, continued support, whereas in some cases others are not in that position. Yes, of course, we have a 3-month cap still there in terms of the energy prices we pay, but pensioners also get something extra. If you're on pension credits, you get more. So there is a bit of support that's given. So it might compensate for perhaps having to pay more tax. But for the average worker, indeed, stealth taxes, as you suggest, are very, very significant because, of course, so many more are coming into paying the tax in the first instance for the first time, the 20% tax, because wages are going up, even if they're not going up in line with inflation. And many more are also now finding themselves in the 40% pay or tax bracket, which, of course, in itself means a lot more tax collected by the government, which is precisely the idea, since those allowances have been frozen and are frozen now, probably until 2028. But you never know, of course, there's going to be an election. This may change, but for the moment, it doesn't look particularly good for household disposable incomes.
OK, Vicky Price, good to talk to you, as always. Thanks very much indeed.
OK, the time is 6:14. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
NHS England says emergency care will be prioritised during the junior doctors' strike in what they describe as the most disruptive industrial action in NHS history. The health body says 4 days of walkouts over pay will mean cancelling appointments and operations where unavoidable. The strikes will run from tomorrow until Saturday.
More than 10 people have contacted the police about ex-Met police officer David Carrick. That's according to the Guardian newspaper. The 48-year-old has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 32 years following sex attacks between 2003 and 2020. The paper says the force is now working to investigate the new allegations.
The King's coronation route will be far shorter than his mother's was in 1953, stretching only 1.3 miles. It's about a quarter of the length compared to the Queen's 5-mile journey. That's because this is, we're told, well, it is anyway, a 21st century coronation. And for that, a special emoji has been created to mark the occasion. There it is on your screen. It shows the 17th century St Edward's crown with a purple velvet cap.
I think it's a shame the route's a lot shorter.
It's probably a cost issue. Costs a lot to get the security out for that.
Yeah, and I guess it is a scaled-back coronation, but it really is short. I mean, I don't know if we've got a graphic of the map, but it is literally Buckingham Palace, around St James's Park, and then just drops you off at Westminster Abbey. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's fine. I think it's all right.
But not enough people are going to be... Oh, look at this.
Oh, there you go.
Top production, look at this. Look, you see literally from Buckingham Palace, you loop round the park, look at this, and there it is.
Yeah.
It's only a mile or so.
Oh, well,
and I'm worried people aren't going to be able to see the state coach.
Ah, well...
There's going to be so many people trying to cram into that 1 mile route,
I think it's all right.
Do you?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you like a 5-mile extravaganza?
Oh, no, I think it's fine. But let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Talking of being on the roads, if you're over 85, and some of you may well be, should you have to retake your driving test? Because I Am Road Smart, which is a road safety charity, their research director, Neil Gregg, has said it's a demographic time bomb. Because obviously the older generation, more of us are reaching that sort of age. And it's not necessarily safe for people over 85 to be on the roads unless they take another test, What do you think? Should you have to take a test when you get to 85?
What do you think?
No.
No.
No, I think because you can raise concerns. You can raise concerns with the doctor and with the DVLA and all that stuff if you think someone's driving is struggling, and hopefully just have a conversation with them. But a mandatory test? And how would you test them? You wouldn't do it to the same standard as someone passing the test, would you?
No. It would be more of a check-up, I suppose, like at
test.
the doctors, yeah.
But then that's going to cost people money to do.
And imagine the distress. I mean, that would be my thing. When I think about this, I think of my granny, who has actually just stopped driving. She's 91. But the distress a test would have caused her, I mean, that would have stopped her driving alone. And again, it's independence, isn't it? I mean, for a lot of people, especially in rural communities, driving is what connects them to their shops and their friends and their community hubs.
It's why you shouldn't lose patience if you're behind a slow driver and they're elderly. I talked to the very great Lionel Blair about that once.
Oh, really?
He's passed away now, God love him. So you don't lose your patience with an older driver because they're just pedaling along, but they're just doing it safely. And...
Oh, that's good advice.
Yeah.
I'm very bad for that.
So since he said that, it makes me think.
No, that's really, really good advice. So what do you think? Do you think there should be a mandatory driving test if you're over the age of 85? Should you resit something? Perhaps a good idea, if you were to instate this, is to have an incentive, like a much lower insurance or something that would get...
But your insurance is generally very low at that age anyway.
No, doesn't it shoot up?
Does it? Oh, I don't know.
I think it gets really expensive, yeah.
Oh, well, let us know.
I think you're more of a risk, let us know.
Yes, GBViews at gbnews.uk. I'm not for it, but maybe you are.
Yeah,
let us know.
Maybe it would be safer, yeah. Now, coming up, as details of the King's coronation are revealed, we'll ask if Prince Harry and Meghan Markle could be stripped of their titles, as talks are reportedly taking place at the highest levels.
Stay with us. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The time is 6:21. Still lots to come on today's programme.
6:45, we're meeting an Army veteran who's going to be competing in the wheelchair rugby as part of the UK team at the Invictus Games.
And at 7:20, as King Charles reportedly pushes for a more diverse coronation ceremony that includes faiths other than Christianity, we'll debate whether he should stick to tradition or is he right to want to reflect diversity?
So get in touch, you know what to do. GBViews at gbnews.uk. I do despair ever so slightly because Ellie was getting very excited about the route map.
I love maps just generally, but
on your computer, but she was tapping it with her pen, with the ink end of the pen.
Yeah, it's gone a bit black now.
She's drawing all over a laptop.
Sorry. It's a work laptop as well.
These things are sacrosanct. Technology is sacrosanct.
I know.
I love it.
Sorry.
Anyway, there is just under a month to go, and Buckingham Palace have released that official route. Here you go. This is without Ellie's pen marks all over it. This is what the King and Queen are going to take for the coronation.
Yes,
Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey. There you go.
Much shorter than the Queen's, as in Queen Elizabeth's, procession. I think hers was about 5 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally just a mile, just literally looping around St James's Park.
Yeah. Now, all this comes as a bombshell new book claims that royal officials have seriously considered stripping Harry and Meghan of their titles.
Our showbiz reporter and our friend Kinsey Schofield joins us now with all of the details. Good morning to you, Kinsey. So let's start with the coronation, shall we? Because we've been hearing from day dot, really, that it's going to be a stripped-back coronation, and we're getting more and more detail of what that's going to look like. And it's now this route, which, for Queen Elizabeth's coronation procession, 5 miles, this is just a quarter of the length.
And, you know, people are coming from all over the world, Ellie. Thousands of people are going to come to witness this, you know, historic event. Although I agree with Stephen, think about it, stripping it down, you know, safety, it's probably a much easier situation. The, you know, television programming have a better idea of how to work around that. So I understand both sides, but it is a little disappointing to think of it being so short because there are people that are coming from all over the world to just get a glimpse, the teeniest, tiniest glimpse of the new king.
A quarter of the length means, presumably, about a quarter of the cost.
Absolutely.
And,
I agree with you.
That's what the King's thinking of, isn't it?
Full on King Charles. I don't know if you remember this, but he wore a vintage suit to Harry and Meghan's wedding. He is very thoughtful when it comes to pinching pennies. I think that you know, we've heard that is why Harry and Meghan are losing Frogmore. It is all about the money and it's all about saving money. So you're absolutely right that could be why.
There is a coronation emoji, though, very modern. Let us know what you think about that.
I love it. And you know what? I have been staying off Twitter because it's become a cesspool, but I will be all about Twitter if I can use the coronation emoji. It's absolutely a reason to jump back on and to play on social media. It's beautiful. It's fun. It's very modern. And, you know, we saw this for the Platinum Jubilee as well. I think it's great.
Oh, yes. I really, really enjoy it. And if you do want to see that, by the way, if you're watching and listening at home, if you just do #coronation, it comes up and it's a lovely purple crown. Have you tried it yet?
I have tried it. The problem is with these things, is it because I'm getting older? It's so tiny. It looks great on the big graphic.
You're squinting away.
It's just like you hardly see the thing. But it is there, so it's quite nice to use. What do we make of this new book, then, Kinsey? It's Robert Jobson, the great Robert Jobson, who's written this book, who says... senior officials have at least had conversations about stripping the Sussexes of their titles.
Right, and Charles not in favor due to his enduring love. What a beautiful description, his enduring love for his son. Robert Jobson even goes as far as to saying Harry and Meghan could find themselves demoted to just Mr. and Mrs. Mountbatten Windsor of Montecito, California. Ouch. You know, I do think that this is a conversation that we'll continue to see because on the horizon, we have Meghan's potential book. You know, Meghan has a book deal. They've said she could leak additional information about her time within the royal family. She hinted at a diary that she kept in that Cut magazine interview. Here in Los Angeles, we're seeing that season 2 of her Spotify podcast is kicking off. She's privately doing interviews with people around town for season 2 of Archetypes. You know, what revelations are going to come out in these things? If Harry and Meghan continue to attack the royal family, I think that there is no doubt that we will continue to hear of conversations about stripping them of their titles. But it is wild to know that those conversations were happening at the highest level and not just, you know, on Twitter or on Reddit, that it's being seriously considered.
Do you think they'll come to the coronation, Kinsey?
I absolutely think they'll come for the coronation. I think that it is crucial to their brand that they be associated with the royal family. It's what makes them interesting and exciting. And I don't, I think that I think Charles would really like to see his son there, which kind of breaks your heart after everything that's happened.
Oh, the Princess of Wales will be delighted, I'm sure. Talking of which, though, there's a lovely picture of her on all the papers this morning, resplendent in blue yesterday at the Easter Sunday service at Windsor Castle.
Isn't she just the most stunning human being? I cannot wait to see what she wears to the coronation. There are stories that have come out of their American publications. Specifically, I read it in Cosmopolitan. Royal experts over here. But they said that she might not even wear a tiara for the coronation. I would personally be crushed. I hope that's not true. I do hope we see her in a tiara on Coronation Day because I just think she's absolutely brilliant. And it's hard to look like a supermodel and the world's greatest mom at the same time. And somehow she manages to do it.
Oh, she does. Honestly, that was the highlight of yesterday. I think it is on the front of all the papers here in front of us. Princess of Wales and little Louis, as always, stealing the show. Kinsey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm not a big fan of just sort of applauding people just for sort of being themselves, as it were, But there is something about the Princess of Wales, and I hate to say it because it makes me sound sycophantic, but she just comes, I've never met her, but she comes across as being a very nice person. She's got some very good and sensible ideas when she talks about the things she cares about. She looks amazing. I mean, it's everything you want, isn't it?
Do you know what I think it is? I think it's because she's not born into it. And you've got to think she is a commoner. Well, she's very wealthy, privileged commoner, but she has just grown into this role and she's just absolutely just effortless, isn't she? And graceful and classy and just...
Classy.
She does us all proud. She really, really does. I think that's what it is. I think it's the fact that, she's not born into this. She wasn't royal by birth, but she just... It's almost like she's meant to be, isn't she? She just oozes class and sophistication, and she just seems like a really nice mum as well, and a nice person.
I would be really pleased to meet her. I'd feel very pleased if I met her.
We should invite her on. Do you think she'd come?
No. I mean, it'd be great.
Maybe if we spoke about something she cares about, like child... At the moment, it's young child development, isn't it? Kind of 0 to 4. We could do that.
Yeah, we could do
Maybe
that.
We should get an invite in.
I'd very much like to meet her.
Yeah.
And William.
But we will see her on Coronation Day because we're going to be at Buckingham Palace, and we know that from the route that is one part of London they will be travelling past. That's only a very, very short route.
So we'll be there, won't we?
So we will see her.
Yes.
And perhaps we can see if we can meet her as well.
All right.
Make it our mission.
Yell across the barriers. Anyway, coming up for you is... What are you doing?
Fell off my chair, but... Almost headbutted the desk.
Those gins she has before we come on. Sir Keir Starmer makes zero apologies for Labour's attack ads. We're going to talk about claims of gutter politics as we go through the papers in just a moment.
This is Breakfast on GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes & Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
6:33, good morning to you. Let's bring you up to date with the front pages today.
The Mail leads with Tory anger as Sir Keir Starmer says he will make zero apologies for his party's adverts attacking Rishi Sunak.
The Times says Labour will blame the PM for crashing the economy as the party prepares to launch more provocative and aggressive adverts.
The Telegraph focuses on GPs scrapping services to cope with upcoming junior doctor strikes.
For the Express, banks betraying loyal customers with branch closures as a new report reveals millions would prefer dealing with someone face-to-face rather than online.
And finally, The Sun go with aircon to the throne. As details, very clever, very good. As details about the King's coronation are revealed, including the use of a royal carriage complete with air conditioning and shock absorbers.
Only on the way there, though.
Oh, what's happening on the return
On
trip?
the way back, they're in the gold coach, which is what the Queen said was very uncomfortable.
Oh, well, that explains the new one.
That's good. They've got to do it, though, because that's tradition.
But if you're cost saving, why would you have a fancy new?
It's not new. It was from the. It's the old. It's Platinum Jubilee one, was it?
He's across the detail.
It's an old one.
And the finances, across the numbers.
I'm always across the numbers. I'm a northerner. Let's go through the papers in more detail with Olympian Chris Akabusi and Deputy Political Editor of The Mail on Sunday, Anna Mikhailova. Good to see you both this morning. Anna, let's start with The Mail, should we? And these attack ads.
Yes, so Keir Starmer is doubling down, absolutely, on his attack ads on Rishi Sunak. He's written an op-ed in The Mail today saying that he stands by every word and makes absolutely zero apologies. And these are, to recap, the adverts that he's been accused of dragging politics into the gutter by implying that Rishi Sunak is personally responsible for not locking up paedophiles, basically.
And doesn't want to lock up paedophiles,
yes, exactly,
that's the thing.
Exactly. So, I mean, what's interesting in this is, in terms of the politics, yes, you know, people criticise... The people who are against the ads will criticise this further and say, how can he possibly be doing this? But I'm pretty sure that Team Starmer are delighted to have a massive op-ed in the Daily Mail speaking to exactly the kind of readers they're trying to get for the election, where most of the article is just him being tough on crime and talking about all the things that he's... that the government has failed to do in the last 13 years. So... yes, it's more gutter politics, but it's also, I think they'll be pretty pleased with this front page today.
What do you reckon, Chris?
I think the reverse. I mean, it's unbecoming. I can't believe that there are not some good grounds to attack the Conservative government and Rishi Sunak on and not resort to this sort of politics. I mean, do you really honestly believe that Rishi Sunak is cheering for the rafters because there are 4,000 pond lives out there? I mean, it's clearly absurd. And, Mr Starmer for so long has been asinine, has been sort of like grey, and you don't know what he's standing for. And then when he does stand up to be counted, this is it? Really? I mean, I don't know who he's appealing to. Certainly my sort of demographic. It doesn't appeal to me to sort of do an ad hom against a chap who's been in office for, the highest office for the last year, and you're talking about something that's been going on for the last 10 years. Really? You want to throw it on him? I mean, it's just... The poverty of intellect just astounds me. Why would you go there? Why would you go there? There were so many things. You know, I'm interested in the potholes. I'm interested in the strikes. I'm interested in the war to Ukraine. Go to war, fight on the politics of the day. Have a go at Sunak for his role when he was Chancellor, through the pandemic, or whatever. But this, it's just absurd.
It's clickbait, isn't it?
It's totally clickbait. In fact, it is absolutely clickbait because the advert was put out on Twitter and it's a sort of very modern day, you know, it's not on billboards like they used to be. It's purely designed to get people angry and talking on Twitter and then obviously grab headlines and steer the conversation. Team Starmer will hope on just the topic of crime in general and not so much on the detail of the advert. So what they want
That's not worked, though, has it? Because we're all talking about Labour's
Well, it hasn't,
campaigning.
But as I said, you know, the op-ed, the article he's written, if you read it, most of it is just about crime in general. So that's clearly what he's trying to do. He's trying to make himself look tough on crime. I mean, we've heard that one before. But he's really trying to paint Rishi Sunak as someone who is completely linked to the government from 2010. So I think the fear for Labour at the moment going into the local elections is that Rishi Sunak will be able to brand himself as a new kind of government and distance himself from the Conservative record since 2010. Of course, he has grounds to do that considering that he hasn't even been in Parliament
exactly
since then. So, look, you know, there are some commentators today, for example, saying this just absolutely shows that Keir Starmer is increasingly scared of Rishi Sunak. You know, you wouldn't descend to this level if you weren't worried about him and if you weren't having to paint him in this light. You mentioned the economy, though. The Times story today shows that that is going to be next. So not only are they defending the current adverts, they're also going to be doubling down and doing more attack ads. So I think we can expect more of the same sort of thing.
No, there is. Yeah, in the Times it does say there's a lot more to come. But has he misread how he wants the Labour Party to win this next election? I mean, even within the Labour Party itself, this is controversial.
I think he absolutely has. I mean, if you look at the host of senior Labour figures coming out against it, you know, you've got David Blunkett basically saying this is an absolute embarrassment, this isn't the way to be winning an election. John McDonnell. So he's united people from all parts of the Labour Party against this in a way. And, of course, there are the reports that his own Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, didn't sign off on it and is against it. So, yeah, I think it probably has backfired.
Yeah, and could it backfire?
Well, I think so. I mean, look, the Conservative government over the last 30 years has less than a stellar record, and it seemed that Labour were quite far ahead just by doing nothing, letting the Conservative government implode. But I do think that this sort of thing actually can unite right-thinking people who will think, hang on, well, if this is all they've got to offer, maybe I'll stick with what I got.
Yeah. Chris, let's have a look at The Guardian, should we? Because I'm one of those... And there must be many millions of us in the UK who think, well, we're quite a sort of generally a happy society. You know, there's not a lot of racial aggravation and things these days because we don't see it.
Yeah.
Right? But this new report actually does not paint a happy picture.
No, so... Again, look, this one was placed at my door today. I've had a cursory glance. So, over a third of people from ethnic and religious minorities have experienced racial, motivated or physical or verbal abuse in their lifetime. Well, I'm 64.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And clearly, I've experienced racial abuse in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah? But I've also seen a marvellous change in the social fabric of the country that I was born in 1958. The world I was born in the 60s and 70s, I got called names that I could never say here that I wouldn't... Well, I'd be shocked to experience today. I'm not saying that there's nobody that experiences that sort of stuff today, but it's just a third of people. So by definition, by their own survey, 2/3, I'm assuming, have not experienced it.
Which will probably then be the younger generations.
Probably. Yeah, probably. Although I think it's impossible. Look, we all prejudge scenarios. We're all prejudiced from time to time when we come up against something that we're not familiar with. So I think it's going to be very hard for anybody to go through life without somebody at some stage prejudging you and saying something that is beyond the pale. This is in direct argument against the Sewell report, which 2 years ago seemed to say that actually everything's hunky-dory in the village of United Kingdom. And it does go, despite abundant evidence of racial discrimination, the survey found that the vast majority of minority groups reported a strong sense of belonging to British society, often alongside deep attachment to their own ethnic identity. And I think that's true. So I'm attached to the United Kingdom. I love the country. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Every now and again, yeah, you do get pulled up and you experience something, that's a little bit wrong. But in general, this country is as fair as you're going to get in humanity. You're always going to get, I think, the odd experience. And I don't know what it's like to live in London in '9 anymore. That's where I was brought up. And I know what it was like in the 50s and 60s. I don't know what it's like there to live now. So maybe some youngsters say, Chris, you're so far in the countryside, you don't know what's going on down here. But here it said 1/3, so I'm assuming 2/3 are OK with it.
Yeah. That's a good point.
OK, Anna, let's have a look at the Daily Express, shall we? And this is millions demand to keep our banks open.
Yeah, so the Daily Express has done a survey and has shown that a high number of people, millions of people, prefer dealing with someone in person as opposed to online or on the phone. Obviously, there's been a huge trend towards shutting bank branches over the last, many years, but particularly since the pandemic as well. It's carrying on. And trying to push everyone onto calling their bank, doing all that online chat. I mean, if anyone's done it recently, it's an absolute nightmare. Yeah. And I think the story is sort of what we already knew, especially about the older generations, but I think what's interesting about it is it's saying that young people also prefer to speak to someone in person, speak to a real human being, particularly about financial matters.
Well, it depends what you're wanting to do. This is the problem. If you're just doing general basic transactions, you do it on an app and you're done in 30 seconds.
Yeah, but if you want to talk to someone...
If you talk about a mortgage, it's a different issue.
No, but I think even the most basic query, it's not so much the problem of talking to someone on the phone, it's the fact that you've got to be on hold for 45 minutes beforehand listening to that music.
What sort of query?
Any query. Do you not call your bank? I call my bank all the time.
No.
I'm a former financial journalist, though. It's a slight professional hazard.
But you know what, Stephen, I actually enjoy going to the bank. So if I've got some money I want to put in there, or I want to know what the lowest interest rates are doing, whether I like speaking to somebody. And, you know, I do lament the loss of the banking and the high streets. And I was very fortunate in my lifetime that I went from going to my bank to having, don't want to get too, but having a banker that you'd call. Yeah. And they would take your... I mean, I'm not trying to be... having a banker you'd call. And I like that. And even that's been taken away now. And so all of a sudden, you have your bank, who you've been banking with for 30 years, either on the high street or a personal banker, doing... Know your customer, telling you cannot bank until you fill out all of these forms, 30-page worth of forms, all online. Your app crashes. You then go and do the robot. He kicks you out or she kicks you out. No! I want to speak to somebody. I want to speak to somebody.
I'm not with it. I mean, the last time I went into my branch, and it's close to where we live, and it's a big branch, and all the rest, I think there was one teller on, a queue half a mile long. So I mean, so sitting on the phone for listening to whole music. Yeah. You need, maybe, but it's just like, it was just such a frustrating process.
I think no one would need... we'd all prefer not to talk to the bank, but one of the biggest reasons people do have to talk to the bank is fraud as well. So it's and things that the bank gets wrong as well. Yeah. So, no, I think bring back tellers, bring back, then in suits and nice uniforms.
Yeah, and what happens to, people who are out in the countryside who... that's part and parcel of their sense of being part and parcel of the world.
It's community hub, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I do miss it when you used to have a doctor, your doctor, not a phalanx of doctors who you see that one and that one and that one, and maybe back to that one, and they look up your notes. The bank manager, hello, Mr. Bank Manager, I know you, you know me, you know I'm a good fella, you're going to give me that bank loan? No, it doesn't compute. No! I'm a person. You know me. I've been in your community for the last 35 years. I'm a great person. We do good work together, and you built my business, and you know I'm going to pay you back.
Well, you want Captain Mannering. That's the thing. Let us know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk. I can't think where I was the other day, and I had a hospital appointment, and a specialist who I'd not seen before said, "And who's your GP?" And it's like, well, I don't know.
No. I was asking the same thing the other day. I don't know.
No, we don't have those anymore.
Yeah, I don't have them.
OK, Chris. Oh, actually, talking to GPs, the Telegraph saying they're going to have to scrap a lot of services to cope with the strikes this week.
Yeah, you know, I'm quite concerned with where we're going with all of this. Because, you know, ambulance, nurses, GPs, consultants, there's one after another. I do get it. So I'm on the side of the junior doctors in as much as, you know, over the last 10, 15 years, they've seen their real-time pay shrink by 35%, and they're actually agitating for some sort of reparation. Let's get me back to where I was 15, 20 years ago.
Except they weren't junior doctors 15, 20 years
No.
But they were in school.
They were in school, but they've taken 7 years to get up to scratch. And when they started, they knew where they would be in the social pecking order, which is something like, I think it's like 29 to 50 grand, which is some money. But, you know, it's not the highest paid people in the world.
No.
So you can understand what they're agitating for. But the fallout is Joe Bloggs, the general public, are going to have to suffer. Now, what they're saying here is, you know, we're going to have to rearrange your appointments, but critical care will be looked after, emergency care will be looked after, which is always very good to hear. But you know what? My fear is we are being set up and primed and nudged for a sort of privatisation of the NHS. Because Barclays says we can't afford it. We can't afford to pay the nurses, doctors, ambulance workers, paramedics, now these junior doctors. OK, so how do we do that? OK, means testing, private.
Well, he's made a deal with the nurses and with many other NHS workers, but it's the 35% that's the sticking point here. It's too high. It's unaffordable. That's what Steve Barclay says.
Well, it is too high. But actually, they've fallen below the pale. You know, while massive people, you know, big bankers, commercial entities have been making massive profits over the last 15 years, they're saying these guys who serve our community, and all of us at some stage are going to rely on our NHS at some stage as you get older and older. As I realise now, as you get into your 60s, things begin to wobble and fall off, etc., etc. So you're going to rely...
There's an image.
But you're going to rely on them. So, look, they need to keep pace with inflation. You've got to look after your doctors and your nurses and your NHS because they're going to look after you.
Yeah, well, it's a valid point. It's a valid point. Let's get all comfy, though, should we? Anna, and talk about the coach that the King and Queen will use on the way to the coronation, not on the way back.
Yeah, this is the splash of the sun. So it's the air-conditioned royal carriage, aircon to the throne. And
great headline.
King Charles will have a comfy, lovely ride on the way to his coronation, but then have to move to an old Gold State coach, which, as you've already mentioned, even Queen Victoria said was distressing.
Really?
So yeah, comfy, modern ride on the way there, and then suitably punishing ride.
But it is, I think, but you can't do it without the gold coach.
No.
Because that is history. When was it, 1623 or something that was made?
It's been everywhere. Everyone's... It almost looks like a rite of passage for kings and queens. Then they, you know, will get his... Queen Victoria said it was distressing. Queen Elizabeth II said it was an old galleon. We need to hear what King Charles will say about it. There's one expert here that compares it to it says it's not quite a washing machine.
So what's wrong with it? So it's just not very sturdy.
Well, it's not so suspension, has it?
Right.
I think we've got to accept that...
Make you slightly seasick as well.
When the Queen went in that ride, she was 20 what? 25?
I hope you're not being ageist about it.
But no, at 75, mid-70s, I suspect sitting in that contraption for over an hour or so. I know it's been shortened now.
It's been shortened, maybe that's why.
But precisely. I think, I think they're going to save some money, but who'd want to sit in that, have that bones rattle, have your bones rattle? So I get it. Get there, look good, have your hair done.
Air conditioning for the big event.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then on the way back, a nod to tradition. My mum was in here, my granddad was in here, blah, blah, blah. Grandma Churchill was in here, I'm in here too. Fabulous.
Yeah, lovely. Right, we're going to leave it there. Chris, Anna, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you a little bit later.
Yeah, enjoyed that. Thanks very much.
Now, training's underway for veterans taking part in this year's Invictus Games in Dusseldorf. That happens in September.
Yes, the Games were created by Prince Harry to increase understanding and respect for armed forces personnel who've been injured during service.
It brings together over 500 competitors from 20 nations to compete in a series of adaptive sports. And our Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley has been to meet a member of the UK team.
The Royal British Legion is championing Team UK in the Dusseldorf Invictus Games. The teams are currently attending training camps and the participants include wounded and ill-serving personnel, as well as veterans like Steve Samper. In 2012, Steve was left with life-changing injuries after the vehicle he was commanding in Afghanistan was hit by an IED. Steve was shot in the helmet, which left him with a traumatic brain injury, and his leg was badly wounded, which later led him to undergo an amputation. And his injuries affected his mental as well as his physical health.
In my mind, I was being a burden on my family. I was being a burden in life. So I did try to take my own life. And because of that, I don't think there's any sort of lower place you can be when that happens. So with the help of my psychologist, Professor Zafar Iqbal, we started work on getting me better, and like I say, I still work with Zafar today with the work that he does, and I still get treatment from him today. But I also assist him in some of the work that he does with veterans and everything like that.
Coming to terms with the loss of his army career was also hard for Steve.
With a job that you love doing and you've loved doing all your life, and you've been wanting to do that since you've been a really young lad, when it's taken away from you through injury, and we addressed this, you're sort of in mourning for your career. You've absolutely lost one of the things you love doing. So it's not like when you're about to leave the military after 22 years service or after however long it is in the RAF or the Navy. It just stops there, and then your military career, you know it's over. You're never going to get back into green kit and go doing the job that you love.
Steve's a keen wheelchair rugby league player and is thrilled to be part of Team UK.
Even though the Invictus Games, wheelchair rugby, you play it with a different ball, it's slightly different, it's still pushing in a wheelchair, there's still collisions, so you still get that excitement out of it, so it's great.
The Invictus Games are all about using sport to support recovery for veterans and armed forces personnel.
We hear lots of reports back from previous competitors and current competitors about the way that they are able to develop a sense of camaraderie. They feel a sense of belonging. They're proud to wear the badge and the flag again, because obviously many are not in a position to serve. So it's critical. It's really important for many people to be able to give them the opportunity to engage in the Invictus Games experience.
So all that's left is to wish the best of luck to Team UK in the Invictus Games this September. Anna Riley, GB News.
I think it's a fantastic thing.
There you go. What a legacy for Prince Harry. I mean, people criticise him now.
Yeah, he's done some good things.
He's done some good things.
Will he do any more, is the question. Anyway, coming up, we're going to look back at 25 years of the Good Friday Agreement as Rishi Sunak celebrates the bravery of those who secured peace in Northern Ireland.
But first, here's your forecast with Jonathan Vautry.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Of all the days of this long Easter weekend, today is certainly looking like the dampest one for many of us, and that is due to this weather front that has been pushing its way overnight, moving from Northern Ireland into Scotland and England, and will continue to linger for some as we move throughout the morning, particularly across Shetland, but also southeast England. Could take until the afternoon before all that cloud and rain eventually clears its way off. For other areas of the UK, there will be some sunny spells, but also quite frequent showers moving in from the west, and these could certainly be heavy at times with the risk of some hail and thunder in the mixture. They will also merge into longer spells of rain, I think particularly across areas of Scotland. Temperatures just a touch down compared to where we saw them on Sunday, but generally around average for the time of year, highs of 10 to 14 degrees Celsius. There will be a fresh breeze around the place as well, and that will just take the edge off things, and it will remain quite blustery into this evening as we continue to see showers pushing their way in. Into the early hours of Tuesday, those showers will tend to die out a bit more, and we'll see more in the way of some clear intervals. That will allow temperatures to just drop off slightly more compared to where we saw them last night. Towns and cities holding up around 4 to 6 degrees Celsius. So still a scattering of showers to watch out for, particularly across western areas first thing on Tuesday. Generally further east, you will see some brightness first thing. Into the afternoon, it's this area of rain that we're watching out for, pushing its way in from the southwest into England and Wales, and then Northern Ireland a little later on as well. Will turn quite damp here, and that certainly putting a damper on the end of the day. Probably feeling a touch better when we hold on to the sunshine further towards the north and east. That is, though, accompanied by quite windy conditions, and we have a yellow wind warning in force for Tuesday night into Wednesday, and that could possibly bring some disruption. Otherwise, enjoy your Monday. Bye-bye.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Rishi Sunak calls for a return to power sharing in Northern Ireland as he marks 25 years since the Good Friday Agreement.
This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie. It's 7 o'clock.
The Prime Minister has pledged a better future for Northern Ireland as he commemorated 25 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. It comes ahead of a visit by President Joe Biden tomorrow.
The biggest ever rise in state pensions will take effect today. It's 10.1%. Still won't keep pace with inflation. Well, not quite. It's unexpectedly risen to 10.4% in the last month.
The route for the King's coronation has been revealed, with the procession around a quarter of the length of the one taken by his late mother back in 1953. The King and Queen consort will travel in the Diamond Jubilee State coach, which features air conditioning, electric windows and up-to-date suspension.
Mind if you're travelling in any other way, Easter travel chaos will continue today with 2.3 million journeys on the roads. That's according to the RAC. Rail is also going to be disrupted because of bank holiday weekend engineering.
Well, get in touch on any of the stories that we're talking about today, whether it's the coronation, whether it's travel chaos. What are you up to on your bank holiday Monday? Let us know. gbnews@gbnews.uk. To our top story now, and Rishi Sunak has called for a return to power sharing in Stormont as soon as possible as he marks 25 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement.
Well, the Prime Minister underlined the defining message of the landmark deal is compromise and urged parties in Northern Ireland to work together for a better future.
Well, it comes as the PM prepares to meet with US President Joe Biden tomorrow as he steps off Air Force One in Belfast tomorrow evening. Our Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie has the story.
There's also very strong community intelligence specifically coming forward in respect of Monday's events in Derry, Londonderry, and a real concern that there may be attempts to draw police in to serious public disorder and to use that then as a platform to launch terrorist attacks on police as well. So going into our operation, that's something that is very clearly right at the forefront of my mind.
PSNI Assistant Chief Constable Bobby Singleton briefs the press as to the terrorist threat that faces his officers later today. And the US President Joe Biden will now only attend one event in Belfast.
I generally think it is absolutely not a snub. I'm delighted he's coming to Northern Ireland, and I'm absolutely sure he'll be pleased with the progress that he will see Northern Ireland's made over the last 25 years.
25 years ago, Belfast was a very different place. Never mind the lack of infrastructure. It was more dangerous to live here than it was in Beirut. The Good Friday Agreement brought many changes, most of them along local governance, policing and community projects. But who did it leave behind?
So the young men need to feel wanted. They need to be made wanted. This will keep them out of criminality, keep them out of trouble. They'll be taken away from drugs. The government should be setting up different liaison groups and bringing the young men forward out of these situations that they find themselves in.
Boxing coach Ian McSorley has been working alongside young men from the loyalist Sandy Row area of South Belfast. These men don't appear to fit in the academic route.
So the government needs to step in here. Obviously, what has went on in the past hasn't worked. There needs to be new initiatives for encouragement and get them out of the current situation that they are in.
Brian Caskey is from the other side of Belfast, a project worker that also encourages those young men in cross-community groups.
I think it's just people took the eye off the ball in relation to what the needs are for these communities. I felt that there was a lack of a strategic plan in relation to where the area was going to go over maybe the next 10 or 15 years. That doesn't exist. So for as a result of that, there maybe is a wee bit of limbo and lack of investment, a lot of strategic planning, and I think that's where it's gone wrong. And then a lot of us are left then to work with the young people and try and give them those opportunities that maybe we thought they would already exist. So I think it's a lack of investment, a lack of clear strategic direction.
Ray is the chairman of Limestone United that bridges both sides of the peace walls.
So the only way forward is to educate the young ones, get them into politics. It's their future, not ours. We've had ours.
Doogie Beattie, GB News, Belfast.
Let's talk to political correspondent for The Spectator, James Heal. Good to see you this morning. There's a lot going on this week. Do you think it's going to achieve anything?
I think that it proves sort of Churchill's maxim that war is better than war, and I think that these kind of things are important to sort of bring together all the parties. Remember, of course, America's role in this. Historically, 25 years ago, George Mitchell was important in getting this agreement over the line. So I think it's really about trying to sort of bring over the sort of prestige of the presidency of the United States as sort of hint at the sort of investment that America could offer were the political, workings to get up and running to stimulate economic investment.
This is a significant anniversary, 25 years on from the Good Friday Agreement, but is it overshadowed by the current tensions in Northern Ireland? I mean, we're talking about a heightened terror threat in Northern Ireland, and also comes as power sharing in Stormont remains collapsed.
Well, the sad fact is that both of those things are sort of consistent throughout the history of the last 25 years. The executive hasn't functioned for 40% of the time. Between 2010 to 2022, the terror threat was listed as severe, and it was only downgraded and then re-upgraded from substantial to severe last month. So really, the very history of Northern Ireland is a very fractious one between the different communities, etc. And of course, we're talking about the anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement today, but also it's 107 years today since the Easter Rising in 1916. So the whole history and the tensions there are very, very sensitive, which is why, of course, we use the language around it, and all these events, as maybe ceremonial as they seem, are also important, remembering how far Northern Ireland has come.
I would just wonder then how much of today is actually, I mean, for the people of Northern Ireland, how much is a celebration? Because, there is a lot to be celebrated, but then how much disappointment there will be that actually this isn't where we thought we'd be 25 years on.
Yeah. I think it's a bit of both, and I think really there's a sense of, I think regardless of, you look at polling, whatever community you come from, there is a sense of dissatisfaction with how Stormont as an institution is handling this. A lot of people sort of point out, for instance, that a lot of the politicians there are happy to collect their salaries while the sort of, it isn't actually working for them. So there is perhaps a sense of disappointment, but there's always that kind of sense of hope, and I think that will be the kind of message that Joe Biden says on Wednesday when he gives that speech at Ulster University.
I was about to say, what do you think we can expect from Joe Biden? Because he has been very outspoken about how he feels about Brexit and how he feels about a divided Ireland, because this is something that's very personal to him, being of Irish heritage.
Yes, of course, you remember that sort of exchange he had with the BBC cameraman. He said, well, BBC, I'm Irish, And I think he very much feels that he is one of two American presidents who were famine immigrants, the other being John F. Kennedy. His family came over in the mid-Victorian era, and he sort of feels that connection to the Irish community, very politically important of both sides of the aisle. But I think he'll be talking about that, reflecting on the past, but also trying to say, look, there are lessons of positivity here, and sort of peppering his speech with the kind of references to Irish literature, etc., and trying to sort of incentivise the idea that by working together, solutions are possible.
I mean, we know, you mentioned about American investment, and we know Rishi Sunak's been really pushing the investment line with this. Yeah. No one's going to want to invest in Northern Ireland if there's no functioning assembly, because it makes it very difficult. Is that going to be enough of an incentive for the DUP, who are proving the problem at the moment, to say, actually, we need to get back to this?
Yeah, first point, business confidence is obviously key, and this is what Rishi Sunak's been doing more recently with the Stormont break and trying to go around sort of saying it's the best of both worlds together. As you say, the DUPs obviously have always been caught between this sort of rock and a hard place of, do you go along with these kind of compromises or do you resist it? And the legacy often of Northern Irish Unionist parties that you often get flanked on the right, you can lose your status as the primary opposition there. But I think that if you look at one kind of read between the lines of what Jeffrey Donaldson's been saying, he's striking a much more emollient sort of tone and a much more conciliatory one, and therefore that gives hope that perhaps there could be something later this year, although we haven't got a fixed deadline in place.
Oh, OK. James, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Now, here's some good news for you if you're of pensionable age, because state pensions will increase today by 10.1%, all part of that triple lock, of course, which will see payments have their pensioners' payments rise by around about £19 a week.
Yes, it was suspended in 2022, but it's now been brought back, much to the relief of pensioners. But some still have concerns due to the current cost of living crisis. Well, joining us now to tell us more is business and finance commentator Michael Wilson. Good morning to you, Michael. So very good news for pensioners. Now they're almost £20 in their pocket every single week. But what will the impact on the economy be?
I think the impact on the economy is a growing realisation that this is quite expensive, and although and as far as international comparisons are concerned, it's not terribly generous. But let's just take it as it is, and it's likely, and I say likely because all these things can change, but it's likely that the full retirement age will change in 2026 to 67. At the moment, it was 65. Now it's 66. So you can see that the demographics of all countries are shifting towards older people, and older people, because of pensions, are relatively expensive. So I suppose we rejoice a little bit in this, but people will say, well, yeah, it doesn't really take care of the heights of inflation, which, if you remember, was 11.1%. This is an award of 10.1%, and inflation will fall as well. There's no question, because remember that inflation is the measure of how prices rise. rise doesn't really relate to the cost of living, which will still remain expensive. So I think a lot of pensioners will be looking at this and saying, well, about time we got some sort of support because we've paid all this in. Now, it is worth noting that if all these figures that are being quoted are for those who have paid fully into their national insurance and have not contracted out in any time of their careers. And you can check on this. I have to say, I am of that sort of age and have found the pensions people, the HMRC people, extremely helpful about this if you want to just check on where you stand right now.
Yeah, and actually there's a gender differential here as well, isn't there?
There is too, and people who've worked throughout their life, like my wife, are very, very cross about this as well, because they're finding that they are being discriminated against. But as I say, I feel as though this is a sweet spot to be in right now, because the retirement age is going to increase, and who's to say it won't increase further? See what's happening in France at the moment. I mean, they're only going to, Macron wants them to go to 64 as a retirement age, and they're already out on the streets burning tyres as the French tend to.
For the triple lock guarantee, it was already hanging in the balance for months, wasn't it, Michael? But how affordable will it be for this to continue into the future? I know you just touched on that. We are in an ageing population, aren't we? And this is very expensive.
Well, I think because the triple lock is whichever's higher, whether it be the CPI for November, whether it be wage growth, or whether it be this 2.5%. Now, it is likely, I think, that by this time next year, inflation, the measure, will have fallen maybe to 5 to 4%. So at that kind of stage, even though there are more people getting older, it becomes slightly more affordable. But it is still an enormous drag on the economy. And you will have noticed, and we've done this story before on this programme, haven't we, about how the Prime Minister is very, very keen to get sort of 50-year-olds back to work. A lot of people are putting two fingers up to say, no, thanks, I'll just go on the golf course. I've had enough of work. Thanks very much indeed. But he wants to get people back to work to somehow try to fund this. There are still a lot of vacancies in the country which are not being filled.
There is an issue. I mean, it's a shame because it sounds on the surface like a positive story, and we keep putting out all the bad sides, don't we, Michael?
Yeah.
But there is a tax threshold issue here as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, because you don't really want to be getting into the 20,000s if one is allowed to say that kind of thing. I mean, of course, you do because of maybe part-time work and all the rest of it. But the pension actually just gets below. But you ought to be aware of the fact that as that begins to push up, if your average income is above that, then you are moving into the lowest rate of tax. And if you're extremely fortunate, moving into the higher rate of tax as well. So it is worth checking all these little details, because the worst thing is just to get over that threshold and then suddenly start being taxed. You're taking less. You might as well, chuck the couple of pounds away just to keep you below that kind of threshold. It's a terrible thing, but it is worth checking.
OK, Michael, good to see you. Thanks very much.
Now the time is 7:14. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
NHS England says emergency care will be prioritised during the junior doctors' strike in what they call the most disruptive industrial action in NHS history. The health body says 4 days of walkouts over pay will mean cancelling appointments and operations where unavoidable. The strikes run from tomorrow till Saturday.
More than 10 people have contacted the police about ex-Met police officer David Carrick. That's according to the Guardian newspaper. The 48-year-old has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 32 years following sex attacks between 2003 and 2020. The paper says the force is now working to investigate the new allegations.
The King's coronation route is going to be shorter than his mother's in 1953. It's only 1.3 miles. Hers was 5 miles. And because this is the 21st century coronation, on Twitter there is a special emoji. If you use #coronation, it brings that up, only much smaller. It shows us St Edward's crown with its velvet cap. Does it make me sound really sort of uncharitable to say I don't get this whole emoji thing?
Oh, I think it's fun.
Because they're so tiny.
No, it's
like,
great fun.
What are you meant to make of it all?
I think it's great. I think for big occasions, such as a coronation or a jubilee, to have a little emoji is lovely. Makes the tweet look really nice and colourful as well, I think.
Oh, well, fair dues.
So I really like it, and I love the fact we can use it already. So you can tweet for a month about the coronation and get a lovely crown.
Little crown.
St James's crown.
There
There it
you
is
go.
again. Stunning.
But it's tiny. It's like the size of a full stop.
No, well, you can't really see it. It just looks like a purple blob, doesn't it? But it's there. And now we know what it is. Now we know what it looks like. So it's been blown up on the screen for
There you go.
us.
We were talking earlier on about this a campaign group saying if you're over 85, you should retake your driving test. And we asked you what you thought of that. And actually, totally mixed bag on this one. Fergus, morning Fergus, says 84% of accidents have one or both drivers aged between 18 and 24, which is why they pay most for their insurance, so implying that obviously older drivers are safer.
Yeah, Scott isn't mincing his words. Good morning to you, Scott. He says the elderly should be tested every 3 to 5 years from the age of 75 and ideally banned at 85. Most elderly drivers are a real danger on the roads.
I mean, well, Andrew is a driving instructor. That is harsh, Scott. Bet you're of the younger end. Andrew, as a driving instructor, I come across a huge range of ages. I personally feel and experience that older drivers are safe and adhere to speed limits. Most are mindful of when it's time to stop driving because of physical limitations.
Yes. And that's the point you were making earlier, isn't it? Most people are aware of when they perhaps shouldn't be driving anymore.
Or families will just say, look, come on, Dad.
You have that conversation.
Anymore.
Is that more what we should be looking at, is families having that conversation and an openness with elderly drivers. Rex says the reality is older drivers tend to drive fewer miles and are safer by taking it easy. They make other road users safer too. There is no reason to retest them when younger drivers are more impatient, aggressive and statistically cause more accidents.
Yeah, but on the other side, David says, from what I've seen, a lot of older people are not declaring their problems to the doctor and therefore keep driving when they shouldn't. There should be a restriction, says David, on the size and type of vehicles along with engine capacity when a person reaches 75.
And Monica makes a good point. She says, I have a neighbour who's 94, onset dementia. He drives every single day. He is not safe and he also can't remember where he is going. He refuses to attend a medical assessment, but he does continue to drive. Someone needs to take responsibility for revoking his licence. Now, that is different, isn't it? Somebody who really...
Well, then you would think whoever's in charge of he's not going in for a medical assessment, but surely then under those circumstances the doctor or whoever cares should say, could have a word with the DVLA. It is difficult, but it's people's independence, isn't it?
Yep.
It's all well and good, I think, when you're younger to say, no, stop driving at 75. You might change your mind when you get to 74
and
you go...
off.
You say, well, I'm perfectly all right. Nothing wrong with me. Why should I stop driving? I'm
75
fine.
is young these days as well, really young.
It is young.
And if you're only retiring at 67, it doesn't give you long, does it, to be out and about on the roads?
That's a fair point.
Yes, linking all the stories
You
here.
see, you're not as daft as you look.
No.
You're not as green as your cabbage looking, as my mother would say.
But let us know what you make of that. Should there be a mandatory test after you get over the age of 85? Let us know, gbnews@gbnews.uk. But talking about roads, talking about driving, Easter travel chaos set to continue today with 2.3 million journeys being taken on the roads. That's according to the RAC.
Yeah, national rail disruption, of course, continues today as well. And that's not down to strikes or anything, but of course it's a bank holiday weekend, so they decide to do all the engineering jobs.
Yes, well, joining us now to go through all the travel latest is journalist Lisa Minogue. Good morning to you, Lisa. Great to have you with us. Hope you had a lovely Easter as well. We've been talking about travel chaos since Friday, and it's set to continue today. 2.3 million journeys taking place on the roads. It doesn't look much better on the rail either, does it?
No, that's right. I mean, this is obviously the great return. We've all had a fantastic Easter weekend, and now we've got to go back to reality. We are going to see significant traffic today, particularly between 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. So if you're looking to try to avoid that traffic, travelling before 11 a.m. or after 5 is going to be the best time for you. Particular hotspots, according to the RAC, are the M5 north from junction 25 to 13 and the M6 north from junction 18 to 20. 2024. Both of those obviously points where they've seen these kind of problems in the past. Now, there has been a lot of roadwork suspended over the bank holiday weekend to allow, the sort of free flow of traffic, but that's not the case, as you say, on the railways. London Euston has been closed over the weekend for engineering works, and there is plenty of other engineering works across the country. So it's definitely something to check before you're going to get onto a train today.
Lisa, that we seem a bit surprised, because as you say, everyone set off on Friday, and now they've got to come back, and yet we all seem sort of, oh, heck, it's going to be another bad day of travel. Well, of course it is.
Yep, and that's why I'm saying if you can, it's always best to either go later or earlier in the day to avoid that sort of, point where everybody wants to get home at the same time. Get home for a cup of tea and settle yourself down before the ready start of the week. But if you can travel later, I think you're going to find it a much more pleasant experience.
How are airports looking, Lisa?
Airports are actually looking surprisingly good. If you look at the chaos we had last year, just after the resumption of serious numbers of flights following the pandemic, really things have been very good this weekend. We did have industrial action at Heathrow's Terminal 5. That involved British Airways cancelling about 5% of its flights. But really that wasn't an issue because a lot of these were multiple frequency flights to destinations where they had lots of flights the same day to these destinations, and people have just been spread out among those other flights. So we haven't really seen many, significant issues at the airports, and let's hope that continues today as everybody comes home.
Talking of airlines and things, though, there's a new survey out and showing who's the best and who's the worst when it comes to air travel. Not good news for Wizz Air for the second year running.
No, it's not. I mean, we've been covering this story in The Sun quite comprehensively. I mean, I have got really concerns when you've got this data which comes from the Civil Aviation Authority showing that Wizz Air's planes were on average 46 minutes and 6 seconds delayed from their scheduled departure. I mean, that's a significant amount. Now, this is an airline that has grown rapidly over the last few years, Hungarian low-cost airline, and they've already been singled out by the CAA for not actually refunding passengers and sorting out, refunding passengers following cancellations and delays. There has been issues with that in the past, and this is yet another idea that really things aren't really working as they should do. This 46 minutes and 6 second average delay is 3 times more than it was last year, and we had significant problems last year. As I've just said, we don't seem to have those problems in airlines this year, so it is worrying. Now, they weren't the only ones. The data also found that TUI, our second largest tour operator, they were second worst in terms of delays. 40 minutes for them, followed by some actual flag carriers. So you've got then Qatar, Turkish Airlines, also in that not great numbers for delays. So it is of a concern and something that really the CA does need to be getting on top of and making sure that they are helping Wizz Air to make sure that the customer experience is a lot better.
OK, Lisa Minogue, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You want it to be more annoying than
well, no, you don't sat in the airport for hours, do you?
Oh.
You want to have a pleasant experience. There you go. I have to say, I've never been on Wizz Air.
Neither have I, but I have heard bad things. Are you allowed to say that?
Well, no, it's fine. It's fine, yeah. But I do. I mean, I like a low-cost carrier.
Me
too.
That way. But I flew back from Belfast, so I'm not going to shut up about this trip. I should be on commission, I really should, talking about Belfast. But I was delayed for several hours, and I was texting producer Lucy here, and I was still sat in Belfast Airport. I had to be here like 6 hours later.
Yeah.
Very stressful. And that was a low-cost carrier.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Not good.
Look, don't go anywhere, because we've got a debate heading your way very shortly. Should Prince Charles press ahead with a more inclusive coronation or stick to tradition? Let us know what you think.
You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it. Like, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us four, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink. Listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 7:28. Still lots to come on today's programme.
Now, if you're already planning your next getaway after the Easter holidays, don't go anywhere, because at 7:45, Kate Hardcastle will be giving us tips on making your money go further when you travel abroad.
And at 8:45, Chef Theo Michaels will be here with some delicious tips on how to make the most of your Easter Sunday leftovers. Can't wait for that.
Have you got any leftovers, though? Or do you not just, pig out and eat the lot?
Do you?
Well, we haven't got any leftovers. No. So, to be fair, no.
Do you know what I do need, though? I feel very sluggish today. I ate
you?
too much chocolate. Yeah, I'm in a chocolate coma. So I need a nice, healthy recipe to make me feel invigorated and alive.
Do you need, one of those vegetable smoothie things?
I need something, to put some nutrients back in me. Anyway, I'll ask him about that a bit later on. Do keep getting in touch with any of the stories that we're talking about today. GBnews at gbnews.uk.
Now, the procession for King Charles's coronation is going to be just a quarter of the length of Queen Elizabeth's journey, or Princess Elizabeth. No, she was Queen by then, wasn't she? But anyway, that was back in the 1950s, of course. And it's not the only change that His Majesty has reportedly made.
Yes, much has been made of the role that different religious faiths will play in the event, with many asking if the King is right to modernise the monarchy.
Well, let's find out what people think on this one. Charles's former butler, Grant Harold, says he can't be an inclusive king if he only supports one religion.
Meanwhile, journalist Stephanie Tetchy believes the coronation should uphold Christian values. So, Grant, let's start with you. You think the coronation should modernise, but don't you think that tradition is the royal family and the monarchy's saving grace?
Absolutely. I mean, tradition is what the royal family is all about. But the thing that's slightly different here is a king who obviously I was lucky enough to know when working for him. He's somebody that obviously thinks slightly differently, thinks outside the box. And what I mean by that is at Highgrove, which is obviously his private country residence, there's a chapel. And I remember this chapel really well. It's called the Sanctuary. And at the time, I was told that it's been created that regardless of faith, anybody can worship there. And I was explained to that was his views, his belief, is that he wanted everybody to be treated the same. Diversity is a huge thing to him. So it didn't surprise me that when this news came out, that during this ceremony, that he wanted other faiths. Obviously, the late Queen said she was a defender of the faith, where I believe that some of the words that's been toyed or been talked about is saying defender of the faith, which, as I said, doesn't surprise me at all, knowing what he was like and his views.
So what do you reckon, Steph?
Well, you know, when it comes to this ceremony, it's about upholding traditional Christian values. And it's not just about King Charles being anointed as king, it's him being anointed as the head of the Church of England Church, the Church of England Church. And by him trying to add multi-faiths, it's like him making a mockery of tradition that's been there almost 1,000 years in the making. And it's not just a mockery towards the Church of England Church, it's getting other faiths involved and getting them to go against what they believe in. Anglican law says that nobody who doesn't believe in God, the Holy Spirit, should not be involved in such ceremonies. So getting them involved in such things, it's breaking tradition. I think, you know, in this country, we make a big singing song and dance about, you know, Meghan and Harry trying to take down the monarchy. But I think we need to look a bit more closer to home and see what King Charles is doing, because by getting rid of thousands of years of tradition, you're not upholding your values. You know, this is going to be a very special day, a monumental day for history, and the world is watching, and it's up for King Charles to represent Christian values on that day.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point, Grant, isn't it? Because it's not saying you can't invite other faith leaders to come to the event, but the whole ceremony itself is a Christian service.
Absolutely, but I mean, the reality is, I've been reading about some census that have been done, and for example, the Church of England, I mean, it only makes up 30% now. When you look at other religious groups, they've kind of slightly overtaken Christians, including non-believers. So, and the king will be aware of this, and the country that he's becoming king of is very different to the one that his mother, when she became queen. So obviously he wants to reflect that and be aware that the country he lives in is made up of many religious groups, many people, and he is going to be a king for those people. And I think this is why he wants to show that. We've got to remember, the last time, well, not the last time, but King Charles I obviously famously wanted to support support his wife, who was Catholic, and there was a possibility the country would have gone back to that religion, and we ended up losing a king because of that. So, you know, I hate to think anything like that would happen again, but I think it is important for many groups to see that this king is a king of all faiths.
Yeah. You see, I think we're quite accommodating as a country for multi-faiths, but I think if the king wants to add those faiths, maybe he needs to do like a separate ceremony with those things, because I think with this ceremony here, it puts a lot of people to become a laughingstock, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's already faced so many criticism towards the Anglican Church, and I think we just need to stick to tradition here.
Do you think, Steph, that we should be representing the tapestry of modern-day Britain, though, which is what Grant is saying?
I think we should, but not in this ceremony. I think some things are up for debate, but when it comes between the Crown and the Church, we have to keep it as is. And I think, you know, Britain is fundamentally a Christian country, and I think we've been quite accommodating, you know, helping other faiths be introduced into this country. But I think when it comes to events such as the coronation, we need to stick to tradition. This is what the monarchy is built on, and this is what the royal family is built on. And I think with King Charles trying to introduce these things, it's going to, you know, make the public lose faith in what he's trying to uphold here.
You see, it's an interesting point, Grant, because, I mean, whereas you were saying, well, you know, you need to modernise to reflect society. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because there is a possibility, if you move away from tradition, people start to see you as irrelevant.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a reality. But the other thing that's important, with what Steph just mentioned, is that if there was a separate ceremony, which I completely understand, but the thing is, you would have people saying, well, why is there a separate ceremony for them? Why is it not included as one thing? And this is where it's a very fine line. And I don't disagree. I mean, tradition. I'm all for tradition, protocol. I witnessed that with the royal family. I'm just aware that the world we live in now is very different, and the king is somebody who, he's very passionate about everything. He cares about people, and he will want to make these changes. I mean, we don't yet know for definite how much the service might change to reflect those views. But if he does, I think it just shows that he's a modern way. And I've always said, I've said for at least the last 6-7 years, that the monarchy's got to evolve. It's got to keep changing. I'm one of the biggest supporters of the monarchy. I work for them, but working for them, I'm aware also of views, and I'm aware that it has to change in order to survive.
What would you say, Steph, to those people who are not of the Christian faith, who say, well, this service just wouldn't represent me?
My problem is that with diversity and inclusion, it's a big topic, and it should be rightly, represented on the day of the coronation, which I think it will, but it just has no place at the ceremony. And the thing is, it's not a tick box exercise where we just need to make sure all faiths are featured in the ceremony. The bigger problem for King Charles is making sure that he's looking at diversity and inclusion on a longer scale more than the coronation. It's not just about trying to show to the world, oh yeah, we're an inclusive country, and then when the cameras are off, we're very much a country which is divided. That is the big concern here. And more than anything, in a religious perspective, like the holy oil which is going to be used on King Charles has been blessed in Jerusalem. And these are things which we should be proud about. These are the things that we need to be celebrating on that day. Anything else is a watered down thing. This is his one time to get it right.
OK, well, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Grant Harold, Stephanie Tetchy, good to see you both. Thank you very much indeed. It's an interesting one.
Certainly is. What do you think?
I think, I'm all for different religious leaders being there and being very visibly seen in the service. But it's not just about royalty. This is a Christian service, and and he becomes the head of the Church of England. And I tend to think we should be proud of that as a country. But I'm a Christian, so obviously my view is slightly skewed. So it's not a case of excluding other faiths, but as I agree with Steph, that they shouldn't be part of the ceremony and the service itself.
Because it is a Christian event, yeah. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Still to come, does the term ladies and gentlemen offend you? As courts worry about upsetting jurors and discussing ditching the greeting, we'll be having our say on that and much more as we go through the papers.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, it's time to go through the papers this morning, and we've got a real treat for you because we have Olympian Chris Sakabusi and Deputy Political Editor, if I get my words out, of the Mail on Sunday, Anna Mihilova. Good to see you both this morning. And Anna, let's start with the Daily Telegraph, should we? No, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Yes, it's a real talker, this one. So a court in North Wales has seen the judge ask its jury that, are you OK with me addressing you as ladies and gentlemen? Essentially, the suggestion is that judges are too worried now about work guidelines to do the old ladies and gentlemen of the jury, which is such a classic, you see in films, we all sort of know the theatre of the courtroom. I mean, to scrap ladies and gentlemen feels slightly strange, and all of this is because new guidelines have been drawn up to try and make sure that no one feels uncomfortable, no one feels excluded.
Oh, I see.
The world we live in.
Was it because somebody might not identify as a lady and a gentleman?
Yes, and I think, this judge obviously is trying to work within these guidelines and ask the jurors whether or not, said to the jurors, we don't want to make you uncomfortable. But the question is, if they're jurors in a trial, I mean, let's say it's a criminal trial, they're going to feel uncomfortable during the trial for other reasons,
It's an easy one to jump on the bandwagon with. I did go to a talk several years ago now, but a lady who is not a lady, so this is where you get it wrong, but someone who is a very eminent professor, actually, but who is I don't know what the term is, but identifies as neither male nor female.
Okay, so non-binary.
Right. Yeah, sort of thing. And listening to them talk about it was, and they just looked like anybody else. It's not, but it was quite interesting. Now, I'm not saying you should then apply this to everything, because it's obviously a very small number of people. But what she said, I think part of the problem is we all have prejudices because we don't know these people.
Yes, exactly.
But I say, ladies and gentlemen, I address you as ladies and gentlemen often, and I don't think I would stop doing it, but it was interesting to get that perspective from someone to whom it doesn't apply.
Absolutely, but I think, like you say, ladies and gentlemen is it's a phrase. You're not sort of literally talking about ladies. I think when most people say it, it's a convention and it's something that's a nice phrase,
isn't it? Yeah.
For example, lots of people can be women may not want to be called a lady.
You can't
but
win.
You can't be so literal with these things.
We're so aware of it now, aren't we, Chris?
Yeah.
I mean, you're almost self-conscious of saying things like that. I was at a wedding on Friday, and the photographer said, "OK, ladies and gentlemen, if you can all just gather here," and she went, "Oh, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that anymore."
Which is the problem.
Which is where we're going, aren't we?
I wouldn't say I'm happy to be picked up in it. So I speak the language that I was brought up in, and if I do offend, I'm very happy to apologise because I did not mean to offend.
Yeah.
But I'm speaking, trust me, this is English. I speak in English, the English that I was brought up with. And of course, I've adapted along the way. So I understand now that there's LGBTQ, non-binary, and so I am aware that the world is a different space from the one that I was thrown into in the 50s. However, I do think we need to live and let live on both sides of the equation and understand that people, if I say ladies and gentlemen and you're non-binary, you say, "Oh, excuse me, I don't identify either way." Also, I apologise, and I would do that. I apologise.
That's the way to do it, because even at this event, someone called this person she, because she was born female, has a female anatomy, so they called her she, and they weren't offended. They were just, it was like, "Oh, you need like a pound box every time, because people would so it happens. These people don't seem to be offended themselves necessarily. It's people taking offence on their behalf,
right.
Which is crackers in and of itself.
I mean, with like a salutation, you say good morning. You could offend somebody by doing that. Well, what's good about it?
Yeah,
what's good about
exactly. You can't win. You can't win. Just live and let live.
Yes.
Let people get on with it and don't.
Well, you will have an opinion at home, that's for sure. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Should we get rid of the greeting, ladies and gentlemen? No. Should it be something else?
No.
Are you self-conscious of using it?
Yeah.
Is that what's happening?
Well, that's a bit crazy, isn't it? Let's go on to a serious story in the Daily Star. We're not looking for little green men anymore.
No. E.T. has gone home. In fact, E.T. never existed. Star Wars. Is it Star Wars?
No, I don't know what the E.T. is.
Okay. It's been a long time. It's been a long time. I just remember the old finger. I mean, I think it's not surprising that it's more likely that if there is life on some of these extraterrestrial places, that it's more likely to be pond life.
So they're looking for a space prawn.
Yes, yeah. And we as human beings, we've sort of anthropomorphized.
Oh, yes.
Did I get it out?
Yeah,
my gosh. And so we tend to look for the green man. And when...
Well, all these bipedal humanoids.
Exactly. When actually, if there is life elsewhere, it's more likely to be looking like a porn. So the Daily Star has just gone to town and the boss warned us, it's a porn.
I was just, when you said space prawn, I was imagining a prawn with a space helmet on. It's too good. It makes sense, though, if you actually break it down, it actually does make sense, as you say.
Well, we technically...
that's how we
possibly
started.
inappropriate to mention on Easter weekend, but we technically began as prawn-type creatures here many millennia ago.
Yeah, we came out of the seas and the oceans, so perhaps...
Primordial soup.
Oh.
I mean, well, but of course... On the other side, you are going to have Christians who believe that we were created, made, and not evolved. So there is that side of the argument.
Creationism isn't that... it's big in the States, isn't it? Not over here so much.
Yeah, no.
You can believe in a blend of both, can't you? Believe God made the prawns and then the prawns...
Yes, you can.
There you go.
Exactly. Everyone's happy then.
There you go.
Right. Anna, should we go over to some serious stuff now in the Daily Telegraph about peace being fragile in Northern Ireland?
Yes, so this is Chris Heaton-Harris, the Northern Ireland Secretary, has written an article in the Daily Telegraph today warning, obviously today is the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, a massively momentous historic occasion, which quite rightly has prompted lots of documentaries, lots of interviews with all the people who were there, who are still alive, and reflection as well. But Christine Harris makes the point that peace is fragile. We have to remember that while a huge achievement was made with the agreement, there are still pockets of terrorism going on. There's the terrorist threat level has been raised for the upcoming visit of all the world leaders to Northern Ireland this week. And I think it's a real reminder that, you know, peace takes work, even with something like the Good Friday Agreement, which is a huge achievement and, quite depressingly, one of the very few successful peace talks in modern history. Even with that, it's still, decades later, takes effort, takes constant work. It's like a plant that needs watering. You know, you can't become complacent, because as soon as you do that, that is when
it all falls apart.
It all falls apart.
Yeah. I hate to say it, we are out of time. Chris, we spent too long talking about space prawn. There you go. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you both in the next hour. Look forward to that.
Oh, that was a highlight from you.
Now, as the Easter holidays come to an end, you may be planning your next getaway.
Our consumer expert Kate Hardcastle has the best tips on how to make your money go further if you are travelling abroad this spring. Good morning to you, Kate. Great to have you with us. I mean, we've just finished the Easter weekend. Well, we finished today, technically. People will already be looking ahead to their summer holidays. So what are your top tips for bagging a bargain holiday?
Good morning. Well, we're talking about particularly the cash this morning when you're travelling abroad, because it is full in those airports. I'm in and out of them a lot, and you will probably see they've got cash bureaus. Now, some people might be very well planned and picking up pre-exchange rates that they've fixed, but a lot of people are going and getting these the currency, and they're just accepting the rate there. And you could be paying up to £100 more for the cash out at airport. So it's very much about planning how you're going to get your currency and what's the best way to save. But you know, the basic rule applies. A lot of us do budget and pay for that holiday, get a bit of a bargain to go get some sun. But then perhaps when it comes to the food and the drinks and the little bits of extra, we've not budgeted it. So the very best tip I can give that works for me is getting a prepaid travel card. And this eliminates a lot of concern. It allows you to budget. It obviously protects you in case you against getting cash stolen, etc. And one of the main things I really like about it is on a lot of them as well, the fees and the exchange rates can be sorted out in advance, so you know exactly where you are.
Because I tell you what I tend to do, Kate, and that's just use bank cards. But, I mean, I've got one where you can get them, can't you, where you don't pay an additional fee for the exchange. You just pay the exchange rate. Is that a good way of doing it or not?
You can absolutely get both credit cards and debit cards from various banks that are more preferable to use internationally. But one of the biggest concerns, Stephen, is when you do get back, that kind of post-holiday nightmare, when you come back and see the exchange rate that you've paid on it.
Yeah.
Then you get a card transactional fee, and then often you get an interest at this side as well. You know, it's bang, bang, bang. All of a sudden, that £10 transaction's really, really gone up. So the best thing to do is know your cards. If you're insistent on using something attached to a bank account rather than one of these prepaid travel cards, definitely know, are they going to charge you for drawing out cash? And don't forget, on some credit cards, if you draw out cash at all, there could be an effect on your credit record. So it's really worth bearing in mind why you're doing that, and are you going to pay it off immediately after the holiday's done? Is it just there to protect you, i.e.? Make sure you understand what the exchange rate is. Can you get one of these accounts where you open it up as a travel card that isn't going to give you all the penalties at the other side of it? And what exchange rate you're paying? If you do use the card internationally and it comes up with a box saying, would you like to pay in the local currency or in pounds sterling, always press local currency.
Oh, now that's a good tip to know, because you always wonder, don't you? Kate, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Handy little hint. I'll look at those currency card things, because then
have a look.
If someone nicks it, I mean, it's as annoying as it is, but you know how much money they've taken and they can't get any more.
Can't get any more. No, it's a good tip.
Yeah.
Coming up, we'll look back at 25 years of the Good Friday Agreement as Rishi Sunak celebrates the bravery of those who secured the peace deal in Northern Ireland.
First, let's have a look at the weather for you.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Of all the days of this long Easter weekend, today is certainly looking like the dampest one for many of us, and that is due to this weather front that has been pushing its way overnight, moving from Northern Ireland into Scotland and England, and will continue to linger for some as we move throughout the morning, particularly across Shetland, but also southeast England. Could take until the afternoon before all that cloud and rain eventually clears its way off. For other areas of the UK, there will be some sunny spells, but also quite frequent showers moving in from the west, and these could certainly be heavy at times with the risk of some hail and thunder in the mixture. They will also merge into longer spells of rain, I think particularly across areas of Scotland. Temperatures just a touch down compared to where we saw them on Sunday, but generally around average for the time of year, highs of 10 to 14 degrees Celsius. There will be a fresh breeze around the place as well, and that will just take the edge off things, and it will remain quite blustery into this evening as we continue to see showers pushing their way in. Into the early hours of Tuesday, those showers will tend to die out a bit more, and we'll see more in the way of some clear intervals. That will allow temperatures to just drop off slightly more compared to where we saw them last night. Towns and cities holding up around 4 to 6 degrees Celsius. So still a scattering of showers to watch out for, particularly across western areas first thing on Tuesday. Generally further east, you will see some brightness first thing. Into the afternoon, it's this area of rain that we're watching out for, pushing its way in from the southwest into England, Wales, and then Northern Ireland a little later on as well. Will turn quite damp here, and that certainly putting a damper on the end of the day. Probably feeling a touch better when we hold on to the sunshine further towards the north and east. That is, though, accompanied by quite windy conditions, and we have a yellow wind warning in force for Tuesday night into Wednesday, and that could possibly bring some disruption. Otherwise, enjoy your Monday. Bye-bye.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Rishi Sunak calls for a return to power sharing in Northern Ireland as he marks 25 years since the Good Friday Agreement.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Easter Monday, the 10th of April. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
Today, the Prime Minister has pledged a better future for Northern Ireland as he commemorated 25 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. Comes ahead of that visit by President Biden tomorrow.
The biggest ever rise in state pension is set to take effect today. The record-breaking 10.1% increase will still not keep pace with inflation, which unexpectedly rose to 10.4% last month.
The route for the King's coronation has been revealed. The procession, though, is just a quarter of the length of the one taken by his mum in 1953. The King and Queen consort will, though, travel in the Diamond Jubilee coach. That's got air conditioning, electric windows and up-to-date suspension.
Easter travel chaos will continue today with 2.3 million journeys being taken on roads. That's according to the RAC. National rail disruption is also expected due to bank holiday weekend engineering works.
And get in touch the usual ways this morning. Drop us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Well, our main news this morning, Rishi Sunak has called for a return to power sharing in Stormont as he marks 25 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement.
Yes, Prime Minister underlined that the defining message of the landmark deal is compromise and urged parties in Northern Ireland to work together for a better future.
Well, the PM preparing to meet President Biden tomorrow. Our Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie has the story for us.
There is also very strong community intelligence specifically coming forward in respect of Monday's events in Derry, Londonderry, and a real concern that there may be attempts to draw police in to serious public disorder and to use that then as a platform to launch terrorist attacks on police as well. So going into our operation, that's something that is very clearly right at the forefront of my mind.
PSNI Assistant Chief Constable Bobby Singleton briefs the press as to the terrorist threat that faces his officers later today. And the US President Joe Biden will now only attend one event in Belfast.
I generally think it is absolutely not a snub. I'm delighted he's coming to Northern Ireland, and I'm absolutely sure he'll be pleased with the progress that he will see Northern Ireland's made over the last 25 years.
25 years ago, Belfast was a very different place. Never mind the lack of infrastructure. It was more dangerous to live here than it was in Beirut. The Good Friday Agreement brought many changes, most of them along local governance, policing and community projects. But who did it leave behind?
So the young men need to feel wanted. They need to be made wanted. This will keep them out of criminality, keep them out of trouble. They will be taken away from drugs. The government should be setting up different liaison groups and bringing the young men forward out of these situations that they find themselves in.
Boxing coach Ian McSorley has been working alongside young men from the loyalist Sandy Row area of South Belfast. These men don't appear to fit in the academic route.
So the government needs to step in here. Obviously, what has went on in the past hasn't worked. There needs to be new initiatives for encouragement and get them out of the current situation that they are in.
Brian Caskey is from the other side of Belfast, a project worker that also encourages those young men in cross-community groups.
I think it's just people took the eye off the ball in relation to what the needs are for these communities. I felt that there was a lack of a strategic plan in relation to where the area was going to go over maybe the next 10 or 15 years. That doesn't exist. So as a result of that, there maybe is a wee bit of limbo and lack of investment, a lot of strategic planning, and I think that's where it's gone wrong. And then a lot of us are left then to work with the young people and try and give them those opportunities that maybe we thought they would already exist. So I think it's a lack of investment, lack of clear strategic direction.
Ray is the chairman of Limestone United, that bridges both sides of the peace walls.
So the only way forward is to educate the young ones, get them into politics. It's our future, not ours. We've had ours.
Well, we can head over to Belfast now to speak to our Northern Ireland reporter, Diggy Beattie, who's there for us live now. Good morning to you, Diggy. This is a significant anniversary, isn't it, for Northern Ireland?
Well, it is in this very unassuming place that I'm standing now. 25 years ago, it gave birth to one of the biggest peace agreements in modern day Europe. Hard to think we were all standing out here 25 years ago waiting for that to happen. And of course, a lot has happened to that agreement since then. It has evolved and moved forward and stalled, and it has had its very big challenges. Too many to go through. The real points of it, I suppose, was 2005, David Trimble losing his Westminster seat, the collapse of the Ulster Unionist Party. Their vote totally collapsed. The DUP took power there because 46% of Unionists voted against the Good Friday Agreement, and that was because they had to give so much. It came to the point where lots of the people in that community said too much, stop, and that brought the DUP into power, which then obviously then went to the other side, and Sinn Féin then got into power, and the moderate SDLP basically faced the same electoral disaster as the Ulster Unionist Party did. And I often think if the Ulster Unionist Party and the SDLP had have been in power for at least 15 years, we might be in a totally different place right now, because they worked extremely well together. They were more looking at the middle ground and trying to help one another. But John Hume at that point should have stepped forward to David Trimble, and David Trimble should have tried to bring his doubters and dissenters with him instead of expelling them out of his own party. But that, as it is history. Where is the agreement today? Well, really, if you look at how the agreement was made, it was made across 4 levels of government. You had local council, the devolved institutions, then your Westminster and the EU. And the EU, because Britain had such a big say in the EU and we all had MEPs, that set government policy the whole way through. That's now gone. Northern Ireland is still held inside the EU with no MEPs to make its decision. So Unionists will not go back as long as they have no say over their own destiny, because that becomes an administrative sharing rather than a power sharing.
OK, Diggy Beattie for us in Belfast. Thank you very much.
Well, let's talk now to former leader of the Alliance Party of Northern Ireland and, indeed, former Speaker of the Northern Ireland Assembly, Lord Alderdice, who joins us now. It's really good to see you this morning, and thank you for your time. Can I ask, first of all, your reflections on where we are in 2023? 25 years is a significant amount of time. We're not, are we, where we wanted to be a quarter of a century on from the Good Friday Agreement?
Not very many people in many places are as far forward as they would have liked to hope 25 years ago. And it's certainly true of Northern Ireland. But let's reflect, there were 2 processes that were going on here. One was a peace process. That was about bringing the killing to an end. And that has been extremely successful. There are still some people who want to take us to the bad old days, but they're not succeeding and they're not going to succeed. The peace process was successful. Then there was a political process, and that's been less successful for a number of reasons. First of all, because it was difficult for people to work together who had memories of being abused each by the other side. Secondly, we had Brexit, and while it was promised it wouldn't make any difference, it has, of course, made an enormous difference because of the issues of the border between East and West, as well as between North and South. And, of course, there's also been a major change in politics. Dougie Beattie there referred to the Ulster Unionists and the SDLP. The Alliance Party that I led for many years now has as many MLAs, members of the Assembly, as those two parties put together. There's been a very significant increase in those who don't want to describe themselves as either unionist or nationalist. And the Belfast Agreement doesn't really facilitate that development. And that's one of the reforms that does need to be made over the next few years.
Lord Alderdice, we're looking back 25 years to 1998 and negotiating that agreement. And there were, of course, so many challenges around that time. And you were a key player in that Irish peace process. Can you tell us about your reflections of that time and the challenges that surrounded it?
The first thing is to recognise that it wasn't just a matter of a couple of years of negotiating. Some of us had been involved for many years in trying to put together both the relationships that needed resolved and the arrangements, the political arrangements. Of course, we had enormous help from, let's not forget, John Major and Albert Reynolds, before Bertie Ahern and Tony Blair, from particularly President Clinton and George Mitchell, the chairman. But it was still very difficult. And I well remember that even a matter of a day or two before Good Friday of 1998, none of us were sure that we were going to get it across the line. It was that difficult. It was that contentious, particularly, but not exclusively, in the Unionist Party and within the Ulster Unionist Party. So that's the first thing. The second thing is implementation of the agreement turned out to be much more difficult than I think we had expected. George Mitchell told us that the implementation was going to be very difficult. He, as he was on so many things, was absolutely right. And when I was Speaker of the Assembly, we had a lot of challenges to overcome. But I suppose the third thing we hadn't really bargained for was the fact that the framework of relationships between the British and Irish governments within the European Union would be disrupted. And that happened with Brexit, and we're still trying to find ways of getting over that. Although I have to say that unlike his two or three predecessors, Rishi Sunak has been very successful at resetting the relationship with the European Union and the relationship with the United States. He has not yet been successful in getting the Democratic Unionists to work the Assembly, and that's the next big challenge.
See, it's interesting when you talk about the challenges that you face. As you rightly said, Senator Mitchell highlighted this, but seeing it in reality is a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it? But so much has been overcome, particularly in the early days of the Good Friday Agreement being implemented. Does that give you faith? I think
you're absolutely right about that. Something that people need to remember. Negotiating in the middle of and after a huge, long, violent campaign is far more difficult than the process of negotiating now. We should be able to overcome the problems of the moment because they're not in the context of a violent terrorist campaign. And people need to remember that was the biggest difficulty we faced, and it's not a difficulty we have to face in the same way now.
Well, that's a nice light to put on it, I think. Lord Alderdice, a real pleasure to talk to you. Thanks very much. And what a valid point. See, this is why you need to talk to people like Lord Alderdice, people who were there, people who've worked through it, people who saw the real problems, because they put it in a context. As difficult as things are now, and as problematic as it appears on the surface, the DUP are being very problematic, but they've got their reasons. Let's not, knock that. But as Lord Alderdice says, it's nothing compared to negotiating and dealing in the midst of a violent crisis.
Yeah.
And so this can be resolved.
And how valuable is it to have his voice? There's a whole generation now. If you're under 25 in Northern Ireland, you won't have known the Troubles. So it's so important that we hear those voices, people that were there at the time and who can talk about the challenges and how complex it was as well.
Yeah.
Let us know what you make of that. If you're watching and listening to us in Northern Ireland, it's a significant anniversary for you this week. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, here's it seems like good news, at least a record state pension increase coming into force today. It's up by 10.1%. Now, it's very nearly £20 a week for most people. Might not sound a lot, but that's £1,000 a year.
Makes a difference, though, doesn't it? £20 in your pocket every single week. But despite the major jump, worth twice as much as the average pay rise, it will still fall behind inflation, which unexpectedly rose to 10.4% last month.
Let's talk to business commentator Justin Urquhart-Stewart, who's here. Good to see you, Justin.
My pleasure, thank you.
Let's reflect on that point, first of all. It's £1,000 a year. It's a lot of money, isn't it?
Well, you think what people are asking in terms of pay rises, and they're arguing about can they get 2, 3, 5%, junior doctors want significantly higher than that. Actually, the people who consistently over the past few years who have done best have been the pensioners, because you had this triple lock in place. And this triple lock meant you couldn't get less than 2.5%. Well, that's hardly relevant now when you've got inflation quite so high. With average earnings levels, so you could be on that, or it'd actually be in a position of inflation. And so link it to... So all those links together meant that pensioners, may not feel like it, have been better off overall. And I got my statement through the other day. Why on earth I should be qualifying for this? Being old is obviously one issue. But actually, it is this. You suddenly looked at it and you think your monthly amount has actually gone up really quite a significant amount. But put that against the inflation and the cost of food, and particularly for those people affecting the lower end of economic brackets, all very well people like me, but if you're in the lower end of economic brackets, it's those cheap areas that have gone up a lot. When pasta doubles in price in a year and you've got a 10% pay rise, well, it's something, but it's not necessarily going to go very far.
No.
So good news on the surface if you're a pensioner, but it's very expensive, isn't it, for our economy?
Yeah, well, it is, and this is why they say now, can they actually get rid of the triple lock? Well, it's almost become vaguely biblical, this now. Don't touch that. A bit like dealing with the NHS. Well, actually, you have to say, look, realistically, life has changed. You're talking about what's changed in Northern Ireland over 25 years. Our economy's changed as well. Really, fundamentally with pensions, we need to educate the public. All of us, none of us were taught about finance when we were at school. We all actually need to be contributing towards our pension from the age of 0. It may not be exactly a riveting conversation when you're sitting in your cot, but your family should be trying to actually make sure that your money is growing slowly and steadily over time. Don't have to take big risks. Unfortunately, what happens is people get round to their mid-40s and say, oh, I've got to start talking about a pension. It's not too late, but we've left it very late indeed. So how do you get around that? And the answer is, don't just treat yourself as an individual. We've got new partnerships, new family shapes, and this, that and the other. Coordinate yourself as a family. That's how you actually maintain your wealth, not just for you, but also for the family as well.
The problem is, of course, people don't understand pensions because they are very complex. You know, you put money... I mean, there's all the tax things at the minute, which, you know, where you can save tax with pensions, which, you know, is a good thing, but it's complicated in and of itself. But people think, well, you put all this money away, it is still at risk. You know, what do you get back? How do you get it back? What tax do you pay on it when you get it back? It's a bit of a minefield.
And it's, you know, and these days, of course, you even can inherit it as well under certain circumstances. But one of the key problems is that actually governments don't really like pension schemes, because you put your money into a pension, they give you an extra kickback for it. So it's really worthwhile, as long as your pension's being well run. Whereas something like an ISA, you get it protected, but the government doesn't give you any support for it. So the government actually prefers people putting in ISAs, so they don't actually have to have some certain short time. So, again, they need to change it. And like so many things we've talked about on GB News is reforming the tax and savings system longer term, so it's understandable and credible to people, and making sure that people are then saying, I understand this, I can now wish to contribute.
All right, just a quick one, because we're out of time. If people are thinking about a pension, who do they talk to? Because I know IFA, Independent Financial Advisors, are very good to have, because it is that independent advice. But it costs.
It does cost.
So, I mean, how do you go about it in a cheaper way?
Well, one of the best things you can do is actually look at people who've been going through this. Talk to the family, because they've actually had to go through sometimes painful issues. But the rules have changed. You will still need to get financial advice. Make sure it's independent. And I always like financial planners, i.e. someone who's not trying to sell you another product. Just what you need now is another dodgy financial product. But actually then avoid those harebrained schemes of get-rich-quick schemes. That's just having a punt. We don't have a problem, but that's why we have horse racing in this country. That's for that. Your long-term money, keep it to long-term, slow, steadily. Nothing wrong with doing boring, but learn from others as to what's happened and look across the generations, and that's how you then do it. Make it dull, but actually make it successful.
Dull and long. And long. Put money away that you don't want to touch for a long time. Really good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
See, I was very lucky. I was brought up with saving.
Yes, very good.
Just little and often.
Complicated,
Little and often. It's a mantra for a lot of things.
Right, 90 minutes past 8. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
NHS England says emergency care will be prioritised during the junior doctors' strikes in what they call the most disruptive industrial action in NHS history. Apparently 4 days of walkouts over pay will mean cancelling appointments and operations where unavoidable. The strikes will run from tomorrow until Saturday.
More than 10 people have contacted the police about ex-Met police officer David Carrick. That's according to the Guardian newspaper. The 48-year-old has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 32 years following sex attacks between 2003 and 2020. The paper says the force is now working to investigate the new allegations.
The King's coronation route is going to be shorter, far shorter than his mother's in 1953. It's only just over a mile. The Queen's was 5 miles. This is because we're told it's a 21st century coronation. Also marking that, a special emoji has been created to mark the occasion, showing St Edward's crown.
And just to say, you're on the money with the coronation, Stephen.
Oh, thank you.
As always.
Yes, I like this from Barry. Hi, Barry. I agree entirely with Stephen.
This always happens. Stephen will say something.
He says something else as well, but that's a key line for me, Barry. Thank you.
I agree entirely with Stephen. But it's true, whenever you say anything on this programme, the man of the people, and everyone agrees.
It's because I'm a just ordinary bloke from the northwest of England, and that's it.
Yep, Anne says, I totally agree with Steph.
Oh, that's with
Steph, sorry.
That's with Steph.
But
No, she was
Stephen's
right.
not. And her comments on keeping the coronation ceremony Christian, whilst also welcoming other faiths to service. This would not happen in any other country that holds a different religious belief. That isn't probably quite true. The royal family has sustained public support by consistently upholding British culture and history. This is not equality, it is diluting British culture and heritage.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree on that one. Let us know what you think, though. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Now, Easter travel chaos is set to continue today with 2.3 million journeys being taken on our roads. That's according to the RAC.
Yes, no joy on the rails, though, because there is still bank holiday weekend engineering works going on.
Well, joining us now from Dover is our national reporter, Theo Chakomba. Good morning to you, Theo. And we saw the scenes at Dover last weekend. How's it looking there this morning?
Good morning. Yes, well, at Dover Port this morning, at the moment, it's clear. It's probably the clearest it's been for some time, and this is because the strategy the Port of Dover put in will allow people to have a smoother journey. But it is worth mentioning Irish ferries are advising passengers to allow up to 2 hours to travel into places like here, and of course in Calais as well, just to give themselves some time before they come here to ensure that they are processed properly. But away from the port, 2.3 million people are expected to be on the roads, many of them returning back home following the Easter break, visiting family and friends in and around the country. And on the rails as well, engineering works still taking place, so passengers are advised to check before they travel, and this is dependent on where you live, as some major engineering works are still taking place. But here at the Port of Dover, perhaps lessons have been learned throughout this weekend during this Easter break. Coaches were limited. They were staggering, essentially, over the last few days. The Port of Dover working with coach companies so that they don't all come in at the same time to see those chaotic scenes we saw a few weekends ago, where some were waiting in excess of 15 hours to be processed, more checks being put in place, and there has been a temporary structure to allow people to come out of the coach, get their passport checks and proceed on to their ferries as they make their way into Calais. But it is still early in the day. They're expecting more road users throughout the day as people head back home.
OK, Theo, thanks very much indeed. It is quite nice to see all those queue lanes behind him absolutely empty.
Empty for now. Let's hope lessons have been learned. Yeah, they were not good scenes last weekend, were they?
No.
Stay with us, though. We'll be discussing actor Ryan Reynolds making the move to a Welsh village of Marford in order to be closer to Wrexham FC.
Yeah, we'll get all the details from Paul Coit in just a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink. Listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 8:27. Still lots to come on today's programme.
Yes, 8:45. I don't like saying this as a vegetarian. If your fridge is full of lamb, oh, poor thing. Or roast vegetables from Easter Sunday, don't go anywhere because Theo Michaels will be telling us how to make the most of your leftovers.
and he's going to do you a veggie version as well.
Apparently so.
Just after 9, we're going to be talking to Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry if Labour risks becoming the nasty party as they reportedly plan more controversial attack ants.
Yes, so if you've got any views on that, let us know. gbviews at gbnews.uk. Time for the sport this morning. Paul Coit is here. Good morning.
About your lamb impression. Do you remember Percy Edwards? Do you remember? I'm sure Ellie won't be familiar with Percy Edwards. Percy Edwards made a living out of doing animal impressions. Oh. And he used to appear on Blue Peter, and that was his gig. That was what he used to do for a living, was do impressions of animals.
Could be a career in this.
I think there could. So if you start with the lamb, and then you can go right to whales and robins and everything, you could be the new Percy Edwards.
I could be. Oh, there you go.
There's no career advice for you starting out.
How we go from that to the Masters? I don't know.
I have no idea.
I tell you what, that's been controversial, though, hasn't it?
Well, the Masters, the weather was awful.
Well, the weather was awful.
The tree. Did you see just about the tree? There was a couple of trees that came down as well. It was amazing that nobody was hurt. But the winner, John Rahm, has won the 87th Masters. And John Rahm, Spanish, fantastic golfer. There he is. Look, there he's celebrating. John Rahm, and his hero, the late, great Seve Ballesteros, followed in his footsteps. It's on the same day, it would have been Seve's 66th birthday, and also on the same day that Seve won his second Masters as well. So all the links there. Yeah. And it's the baton passing through the Spanish from Ballesteros to Olazabal, or Olazabal, to Sergio Garcia, and now there's John Rahm. And there he is getting the green jacket. Now, you can see the green jacket there he's being handed. Everybody that wins the Masters gets the green jacket. They only can keep it for a year. They can take it home, but then after the year is up, they have to give it back to Augusta National.
Why are they all wearing it in the background?
Because they're members. They're either members or former winners. So if you're a member of the Augusta National, you wear the green jacket. And if you're a former winner, you get to wear the green jacket, and that's it. Nobody else is allowed one.
You gave it back after a year.
But there is a caveat to this, is that you do have to give it back after a year. But if you go back to the golf course, there's a locker there where it's always kept. Then you can put it on, but then you have to remove it.
Right.
It's so ridiculous. Anyway, but there you go.
It is ridiculous.
But someone found one, actually. Someone found one in a thrift shop in America, and they found one of these green jackets, and it was a proper Augusta Masters jacket. And it was verified, and it sold for like $350,000.
Ouch.
Yeah, for a green jacket.
I'll tell you what, though, I think it was controversial because Koepka was... I mean, he was in the lead all weekend.
Well, he was. He was in the lead right the way through. And for anybody that's seen the documentary on Netflix, all about golf, which is called Full Swing, and they go behind the scenes, and you learn about Brooks Koepka. Brooks Koepka, fantastic American golfer, had a really great run and then kind of hit the skids. And then you can see that in the documentary. He decides to go to Live Golf, who offer him a fortune to go and play for the Saudi-backed Live Golf, which is like the Rebel Tour. So he's gone off there and then come back to the playing the Masters, and surprised a lot of people by doing so well. But it's the mental thing. That's where it is like, did he have the mental capacity to actually get through the end? And then it started sliding. Now, the other big name is Phil Mickelson. Now, Phil Mickelson, who is also part of Live Golf, and he's the most controversial figure of all of them. $100 million he was paid to go to Live Golf. Said some bad things about Saudi Arabia, said some bad things about the PGA, and then he's come back, and so the guy's 53 years old. And has gone and shot a 65, which is the best round ever in a Masters of anybody over 50, and almost won it. And almost won it right at the end. So it really has been an incredible story at the Masters. And then Tiger Woods pulled out. I mean, quite frankly, he shouldn't really be playing anymore because of the injury. Plantar fasciitis.
Oh.
Have you had that?
That's the heel. Is that heel? I think it's foot
heel,
area.
foot area. Couldn't walk around because it's hard enough to play 18 holes. But because of the rain the day before, then they had to play even more than that and sort of decided, well, that's it. Took a couple of double bogeys, which we now know exactly what that means.
Very bad.
It is very bad.
Very, very bad.
So it could be time for Tiger to retire.
Tiger to retire, that was nice. Nice way to end on the golf.
The title race in the Premier League, that's got a big hole in it now.
Well,
it's blown wide open.
It is blown wide open because we've got Manchester City and we have, of course, Arsenal. Now, I had an argument about a very heated argument about the Arsenal. It's in Manchester City's hands now. But then again, we could say it's in Arsenal's hands also. Why is that, I hear you say? Why on earth is that, I hear you say?
You've lost me.
Well, they're playing each other. So the way that the actual title race looks at the moment is that we have Arsenal in the lead. They've played 30 on 73 points. Why am I feeling like Carol Vorderman right now? Man City played 29 on 67. So Man City, if they win the game in hand, they will be 3 points behind Arsenal, but they still have to play Arsenal. And if they beat Arsenal, that would put them ahead on goal difference.
I'll have 2 from the top and 3 from the bottom.
OK, that's it.
Yeah, there you go.
There's drama at Anfield. We've got time to talk about that.
There was drama. So in the game, there was. Now, it was 2-0 to Arsenal. Arsenal looked to be coasting, and then Liverpool turned it round. Now, there's talk, the fact that it was Granit Xhaka, the Arsenal midfielder, that had a little scrap, and it was with Alexander-Arnold, and that then got the crowd going, and it got the whole Anfield crowd behind Liverpool. It kind of fired them up, and then they came back to drew 2-2. So it was an incredible game. And also, we saw something that we've never seen before, and this was the linesman. Now, the linesman, his name is Konstantin Hatzidakis.
Say that properly.
Konstantin Hatzidakis.
That's it.
Thank you very
Good.
much. Now,
Very
he's
nice.
a big fella, and Andy Robertson had an argument with him at the end of the first half, starts pointing his finger, and as Constantine goes to sort of move him away, now there's Andy Robertson there, he's pointing to his chin because Hatzidakis' elbow headed towards the chin of Andy Robertson, and he's going, look, he hit me on the chin, which is very rare that you would actually see a linesman do such a thing. So we're now wondering what's going to happen to the linesman, whether he'll be banned or whether anything will happen after that.
Right, I'm being yelled at because we're out of time, but I can't let you go without talking about...
I've only just got going.
Yeah, no, the biggest game in non-league history.
This is huge. It's Wrexham versus Notts County. Now, Notts County are on 100 points. Wrexham are on 100 points. We know about Wrexham, we know about Ryan Reynolds, the whole Hollywood story. This could go on and on. And Ryan Reynolds has now bought a house very close to Wrexham as well. So he's going to live at a £1.5 million house he's bought. It's probably quite not easy to find one that costs so much.
No, not that much.
And I mean that with absolute respect, of course. But Notts County, the oldest team in the league, Wrexham are the second oldest. They're both on 100 points. They both want to be promoted to the league, to go into League Two. So they've both got a few games left, but it's going to be, as my dad would say, it's going to be a real ding-dong.
A ding-dong.
It's going to be a ding-dong.
Excellent.
Conti, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Say it one more time, go on.
Konstantin Hatzidakis.
Love it. I mean, that's really
Very
good, actually.
good.
Well, I've been working on it for
Were
quite
you
a bit.
practicing that earlier
I
before you
have.
came in here? Very good.
Thank you.
Oh, dear. Right, don't go anywhere, because we're going to discuss what...
I know.
That's very
Well, thank you
good.
very much. Thank you.
I'm impressed. I feel like a Greek holiday now. Anyway, we're going to be talking about 999 calls and also take you through the papers in just a few minutes. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It is 8:39. Good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. We're going to take you through the papers now with Olympian Chris Akabusi and Deputy Political Editor of The Mail on Sunday, Anna Mihailova. Good to see you both. Anna, let's start with you and The Mirror, looking at a hospital scandal.
Yeah, so The Mirror splashed on a story about, once again, delays to ambulances and the horrible knock-on effect this has had. So they've got a survey that's been commissioned by the Lib Dems that 1 in 3 people said they had to make their own way. They made their own way to hospital, either by driving or getting a taxi, or even more depressingly, by taking a bus.
No.
So they've also got some... I mean, The Mirror has been campaigning on this issue. They've got some very moving stories of people who have lost their lives because of ambulance delays. And, of course, this is such a huge issue. It was ongoing even before the pandemic and has become even worse now, and isn't helped as well by the fact that, you know, what some would have seen as a solution, where some of these ambulance services have been privatised, so they're outsourced to private companies, but there are just as many scandals about them being late or turning up with the wrong equipment or not turning up at all as there are with the traditional ambulance service.
I don't want to sound too controversial, but if you can get on a bus...
Can you get on a bus, though?
But if people have if people have actually gone on a bus, because should they have been waiting for an ambulance in the first place?
Well, I mean, because it can be the last resort. I mean, you know, if you've got to go, you've got to go.
If you don't have a car or can't afford a taxi.
The challenge you have, though, is that if you do make it to the hospital under your own steam, you're in for a long wait. I mean, I've gone to hospital before. You know, I thought, I'll be really clever. I won't call the ambulance, and then you end up being there, like you said. Oh, you must be okay all day, late into the night. Yeah. You know, so it's a disaster.
Does it make a difference, though, if you come in an ambulance? Because I've been in the back of an ambulance. I was in a car crash about 18 months ago. I came in the back of an ambulance, and I joined the back of the queue. I was there for 5.5 hours. Didn't make any difference. But I was walking. I was fine.
Yeah. It'll definitely make a difference. Definitely. If you make
it there, entrance, don't
if you make it there on your own steam, you are going to be at the back of the queue. Yeah.
But they do have people just ringing an ambulance when you do not need one, don't they? And they're expensive to send out.
Yeah, that's
if we're talking about, you know, crisis in our NHS, the ambulance service is so expensive to deploy.
Yeah, but you only need one person who doesn't call the ambulance.
When they need one.
And then...
Yeah, and the mixed messages as well we're getting. Remember, we had these are people making their own way here, but we've actually had hospital leaders say, if I were to, you know, remember there was that woman who said, I'd drive myself, I wouldn't wait for an ambulance. So when you're getting people within the service saying this, of course some people are going to look at that and worry about calling an ambulance and maybe not even do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have got a major crisis in the NHS, no getting away from it. Can we have a look at The Guardian, Chris? Looking at, I mean, they're looking at what seems to be increasing tensions between China and Taiwan at the moment.
Yeah, so the president of Taiwan met up with the House of Speaker, the US, and so the Chinese, almost like a ticking off, the Chinese People Liberation Army sent 70 warplanes to start playing war games. And, when I say hitting, simulation of hitting targets on land, on sea. And the Taiwanese have actually said back, we are monitoring it, as are the USA. The USA are saying that they feel quite confident and comfortable that they've got enough resources in the area to maintain peace and stability. And I'm just reading this sort of stuff and thinking, because I've got young children, so I've got a stake in this world, even when I'm gone. But what sort of world am I leaving these people when, this sabre rattling, it's just alarming and concerning. Now, it sounds to me it's pretty low level. It's just China saying, we've got our eye on you, and you start talking to USA too sternly. This is what we can do. But these sort of things can go. It only takes a mistake somewhere, sometime, and then you're into something you didn't really visualise.
Interestingly, though, at the minute I'm just rereading The Hunt for Red October, which is obviously Tom Clancy's not a new book, and that's as there's a lot of that sabre rattling goes on in this. It's been the United States and Russia, but you just think it's been. These things have always happened, haven't they? Yeah,
I mean they have, but they've not happened in a time where we've got a war in mainland Europe that we didn't see, where Russia is cozying up to China, Pakistan and India are sort of playing commercial roles with China and Russia, and it's very easy to see a massive divide, and where all of a sudden we're fighting on a couple of fronts, even if it's little skirmishes, even if it is SBS and SAS. It was only a few months ago where there were UFO gates. Do you remember the Americans started shooting down some balloons that were flying over their space? It's a little bit too naughty for me. Look, it is the beginning, and it looks like it's not serious, and yet it's serious.
Yeah.
It's serious if you're living in Taiwan, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely,
it's incredibly threatening. Anna, let's have a look at the Daily Mail, shall we? And the crown jewels.
Yes. So today, there is a lot of amazing coverage about the coronation in the papers, in all the papers, but the Daily Mail, I'm a little biased here, obviously, but has got a great piece on the crown jewels and all the different history. Rebecca English, the royal editor, was given access to the tower to see everything, and it's just got some great detail. People who love this stuff really buy a paper today, because there's a lot here. So, for example, the king is going to be carrying one sword that will be blunted. That'll be a sign that he is merciful. That's to remind him to be merciful. The crown, the St. Edward's crown, the one that's been turned into an emoji for the coronation, that's when that was first made in the restoration, the actual gems were rented to not cost too much. So, because at the time they were worried about cost cutting. Obviously, restoration didn't want to cost too much, make the monarchy sound too expensive. Very relevant now in the cost of living crisis with our own king, who's quite concerned about this. Just to note, the crown does have permanent jewels now. I don't know where they'd be renting them to or from at the moment. But these lovely little details that I think buy a paper today if you're interested in all this stuff. Yeah,
it's just lovely little insights into our history and heritage, isn't it? I love it. We are out of time.
Oh, okay.
I know.
Poised.
Yeah, I was poised. Yes, I was ready to rock and roll, but no poised.
But there we have to leave it. Chris Akabusi, Anna
Thank
Mihlova, good to see you both. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, time is 8:47. Let's bring you up to date with today's top stories.
And the Prime Minister has stressed the bravery of leaders who secured the Good Friday Agreement 25 years ago. The Prime Minister also called for power sharing to return to Northern Ireland swiftly. The Police Service of Northern Ireland has warned of potential attacks on police officers by dissident Republicans in Londonderry today.
The Labour leader says he stands by every word of an advert that accuses Rishi Sunak of not wanting child sex abusers to go to jail. Writing in the Daily Mail, Sir Keir Starmer said he makes zero apologies for the campaign ad, which was posted on Twitter.
A third of people in the UK prefer to do their banking in person, according to a new survey. It says people still want to seek human advice amid cost of living pressures.
Wizz Air has been named the worst major airline for flight delays from UK airports for the second year in a row. In an investigation by the Civil Aviation Authority, the airline's departures were on average 46 minutes and 6 seconds behind schedule in 2022. The carrier has not responded to the findings of the investigation.
Now, as the long weekend comes to an end, it's leftovers galore for many people, with roasties and meat from Sunday lunch and half-eaten Easter eggs today. Who has a half-eaten Easter egg?
I actually do.
Do you?
Yeah, well,
That's not like you.
Well, you gave me 2 yesterday, so I nibbled on a little bit of both, but I haven't finished them.
One wasn't for you.
I know. Sorry. I had to try it. Had to test it. But if you've got more food than you can get through, what about getting creative with your leftovers?
Ah, yeah, so what do you actually do with them? Let's talk to celebrity chef Theo Michaels, who's here. Good morning.
Morning, guys.
Morning.
How are
It
you?
smells amazing.
Ah, that's just the after show as well.
Oh, yeah.
So
So what do you do with stuff which, the cold leftovers?
Well, do you know, so we've gone with the lamb. We've gone very traditional this year with lamb. And so I thought, but it's quite heavy, a big Easter roast dinner, right? So quite afterwards, I think it's quite nice to have something a bit lighter, maybe. So we've gone with some really quick makeshift Greek gyros, we would call them. I mean, it's
gyros.
Gyros? Don't swear at me, Stephen.
No.
So it's written gyros, but would be pronounced gyros.
Gyros. Right, okay.
And so it's a much lighter. It's a really good way to use up leftover lamb, and it just adds a little bit of spring and summer for the day after with those leftovers.
Yeah. Great. So how do we go about making it a gyros?
Easy. Love the pronunciation, by the way.
Thank you.
Easy peasy. So we have got some really lovely sort of gyros, which is the bread, the dough, and then we've kept it really simple. So I think you don't want to do too much work over Easter, right?
No.
So we've got a lovely bit of lamb that we've just shredded. So if you've got your leftover roast lamb, wrap it in foil, put it in the oven, 20 minutes just to warm it through. And then we've made a homemade tzatziki, so a bit of yoghurt, crushed garlic, mint or dill, squeeze a lemon, pinch of salt, a little whiz of olive oil, mix it together and you get lovely fresh tzatziki. It sings the summer, right? Some nice tomatoes, big ripe tomatoes. Don't keep them in your fridge. You want them warm and lovely.
Can you find tomatoes now?
You've got to look hard. I think there's a black market on tomatoes, actually.
Yeah.
And then just a lovely bit of lemon, a little bit of salt, and you've got this amazing, really fresh dinner.
I'm just looking at that. The way you're chopping your garlic.
Yes.
You put salt on the garlic.
So the salt,
Why is that?
So it acts as an abrasion. So it's not for flavour on that. So once you've chopped garlic, if you're crushing it like on the video, you put a pinch of salt on it, and it's like an abrasion, almost a bit like sandpaper. So when you use the knife to crush it, it helps sort of break down the cloves of garlic.
All right. Oh, well, that's good to know.
Yeah, it's really good. And you'll notice in the when you sort of grate the cucumber, there's so much water content in it that we give it a little squeeze as well. That just gets rid of it, and that stops your tzatziki from going watery.
Oh, great.
See, I'll tell you what's interesting, because a lot of people, when they have leftovers and things, what they do is they say, well, they almost just have a do-over, don't they? Reheat it and just try and do the same thing again, only smaller. Well, it's quite interesting to do something which is completely different.
Well, I think so, and also for me, it's, we're entering spring. You've just had a really big, heavy Easter dinner, and so I really like something like this that's just really light. It's refreshing. Serve it with a nice salad on the side. I mean, you're good to go with that.
Go on, Ellie. Go on.
Yeah, I want to try it.
Go right. I have a lovely one for you, Ellie.
Oh, look
there
at
this.
There you go. So you've got a veggie
Stephen,
one.
and you've got a veggie
I've
one
got
there.
a veggie one.
Do you know what? I'm actually starving, so I'm really up.
So give it a little squeeze. There's some knives and forks here, guys.
Oh, I've got a set down here already.
I'm going to pop them there. In case
Give a little lemon squeeze.
You see, lemon squeeze, exactly.
What intrigued more than anything else is what this tzatziki... Because I like tzatziki, but I never thought of making it.
You can't beat homegrown tzatziki, although you can't kiss anyone else who hasn't had it afterwards, because it's a bit punchy.
It is very garlicky.
Yeah, it's very garlicky.
Lovely.
We both need to have something. So you're going to be sat next to me for the next...
I'm not going to kiss you, though, darling. You'll be all right.
Close enough. Smell it.
But there's so many options you can do this. I think you mentioned, Stephen, about rehashing dinner, which is why I think if you're looking at sort of food waste as well, things like a good curry or a stir-fry, great, because any of those leftover vegetables, you can just chop them up. Don't be too prescribed or precious and just throw them straight into the pan with the rest of the dish. And so it's a great way to use everything up, you know, add a bit of spice.
Can I just say this is absolutely stunning.
You're enjoying that, aren't you?
Oh, wow.
But I tell you what, it's good. I know you often do a lot of Greek food like this, don't you? You've done a few times on the show. It's a bit scary if we're not familiar with it, isn't it? I mean, this obviously is very simple, really, but the idea is a bit scary.
Yeah, and do you know, but I think that's with food in general. Like, as soon as you take away the fear factor, it's just food. Right? You can't go wrong.
It's delicious, delicious food. Theo, we're almost running out of time, but there are going to be people with lots of leftover Easter eggs today.
OK, so
put you on the spot. What can they do with that?
I would make a chocolate bark, right?
Ooh.
So get your Easter eggs, whack them in the oven, right? Let them melt. If you've got white chocolate, dark chocolate milk, keep it separate. Melt them, and then put them in a tray, drizzle them over like this, and just with a toothpick, make some swirls in it, and then just leave it to set. And you can upgrade it. So you can throw some chopped nuts in there. You can throw rose petals if you want, a bit of spice even, and then you've got this amazing chocolate slab that you can basically, you know, you've recycled.
Theo, you've got to get out before Ali collapses on the floor with excitement over that one. Really good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. And thanks for our lovely food.
Yeah, we're back in just a couple of minutes after a look at the all-important weather.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Of all the days of this long Easter weekend, today is certainly looking like the dampest one for many of us, and that is due to this weather front that has been pushing its way overnight, moving from Northern Ireland into Scotland and England, and will continue to linger for some as we move throughout the morning, particularly across Shetland, but also southeast England. Could take until the afternoon before all that cloud and rain eventually clears its way off. For other areas of the UK, there will be some sunny spells, but also quite frequent showers moving in from the west, and these could certainly be heavy at times with the risk of some hail and thunder in the mixture. They will also merge into longer spells of rain, I think particularly across areas of Scotland. Temperatures just a touch down compared to where we saw them on Sunday, but generally around average for the time of year, highs of 10 to 14 degrees Celsius. There will be a fresh breeze around the place as well, and that will just take the edge off things, and it will remain quite blustery into this evening as we continue to see showers pushing their way in. Into the early hours of Tuesday, those showers will tend to die out a bit more, and we'll see more in the way of some clear intervals. That will allow temperatures to just drop off slightly more compared to where we saw them last night. Towns and cities holding up around 4 to 6 degrees Celsius. So still a scattering of showers to watch out for, particularly across western areas first thing on Tuesday. Generally further east, you will see some brightness first thing. Into the afternoon, it's this area of rain that we're watching out for, pushing its way in from the southwest into England, Wales, and then Northern Ireland a little later on as well. Will turn quite damp here, and that certainly putting a damper on the end of the day. Probably feeling a touch better when we hold on to the sunshine further towards the north and east. That is, though, accompanied by quite windy conditions, and we have a yellow wind warning in force for Tuesday night into Wednesday, and that could possibly bring some disruption. Otherwise, enjoy your Monday. Bye-bye.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Rishi Sunak calls for a return to power sharing in Northern Ireland as he marks 25 years since the Good Friday Agreement.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. It's Easter Monday, the 10th of April.
So what gyros in your teeth?
Some things, I've still got a bit of tzatziki here. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister has pledged a better future for Northern Ireland as he commemorated 25 years since signing the Good Friday Agreement. It comes ahead of a visit by President Joe Biden tomorrow.
The biggest ever rise in state pension will take effect today. It's 10.1%, but still won't keep quite pace with inflation, which rose to 10.4% last month.
The route for the King's coronation has been revealed, with the procession around a quarter of the length of the one taken by his late mother back in 1953. The King and Queen consort will travel in the Diamond Jubilee State Coach, which features air conditioning, electric windows and up-to-date suspension.
Mind you, for those of us travelling in normal vehicles, the Easter chaos will continue today with 2.3 million journeys on the roads. National rail disruption is also expected because of engineering works.
And do get in touch the usual way via Twitter, GB News, or you can email us gbnews@gbnews.uk. To our top story now, and Rishi Sunak has called for a return to power sharing in Stormont as soon as possible as he marks 25 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement.
Well, the Prime Minister underlined the defining message of the deal was compromise and urged parties in Northern Ireland to work together for a better future.
Well, it comes as the PM prepares to meet with US President Joe Biden tomorrow evening as he steps off Air Force One in Belfast.
Well, earlier we spoke to the former Speaker of the Northern Ireland Assembly, Lord Alderdice, who reflected on the agreement's legacy.
Not very many people in many places are as far forward as they would have liked to hope 25 years ago, and it's certainly true of Northern Ireland. But let's reflect, there were 2 processes. that were going on here. One was a peace process that was about bringing the killing to an end, and that has been extremely successful. There are still some people who want to take us to the bad old days, but they're not succeeding and they're not going to succeed. The peace process was successful. Then there was a political process, and that's been less successful for a number of reasons. First of all, because it was difficult for people to work together who had memories of being abused each by the other side. Secondly, we had Brexit, and while it was promised it wouldn't make any difference, it has, of course, made an enormous difference because of the issues of the border between East and West, as well as between North and South.
Let's head over to Belfast now to speak to our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie, who's there for us. Good morning to you, Dougie. This is a significant anniversary, isn't it, for the people of Northern Ireland?
Very much so. In fact, this car park behind me now is where 25 years ago all the media camped out waiting for that agreement to be brought to us. And we, at some time then, knew the bones of it. It wasn't really the whole minutiae of it for quite a while afterwards. But yes, that agreement has worked. It's worked for 25 years. And as Sir Lord Alderdice has said there, well, it has kept Northern Ireland relatively peaceful over that 25-year period, and that has worked because although the political side of this agreement has been clunky, it has went on. Unfortunately, the Brexit arrangements have really stopped it in its tracks. Unionists not going in to sit in the Assembly in Northern Ireland, and that's because the consent issue is really not there. They are pretty much looking at where their laws are made, and their laws are being made in Europe, in the EU, and being overruled. Or they're being ruled by EU laws that they have no say in, so there's no MEPs here in Northern Ireland. So if you can imagine after Brexit, when Britain left as one part, and you can imagine if England was told that no, you're going to be ruled by the EU with all your laws by the EU, and you have no MEPs to change it, and Westminster can try to change it, but it's going to be overruled, there would be a massive uproar. And that's exactly what's happened here in Northern Ireland. That's the easiest way of explaining it. And of course, nationalists do have MEPs through the Republic of Ireland, so they're pretty happy with the deal and want this to go on above. Until Rishi Sunak has that sorted, until that is brought to bear, the Good Friday Agreement will not go anywhere. The institutions above won't really go forward. And of course, he said that the handbrake is there. Well, the handbrake unionists are very much saying, well, we don't trust the handbrake because it means if we don't agree with some of these laws and we then go back to a panel that advises us and then says that we can, and what happens if they do what they did with Article 16 and don't enforce the handbrake? And that's where unionists want reassurance if they're going to go back in here.
OK, Dougie Beattie there for us in Belfast. Thank you very much.
Now, training is underway for veterans taking part in the Invictus Games in Dusseldorf this September.
The Games were created by Prince Harry to increase understanding and respect for armed forces personnel who've been injured during service.
Now, this year it's going to bring together 500 competitors from 20 nations to compete in a series of adaptive sports. Anna Riley reports.
The Royal British Legion is championing Team UK in the Dusseldorf Invictus Games. The teams are currently attending training camps, and the participants include wounded and ill-serving personnel, as well as veterans like Steve Samper. In 2012, Steve was left with life-changing injuries after the vehicle he was commanding in Afghanistan was hit by an IED. Steve was shot in the helmet, which left him with a traumatic brain injury, and his leg was badly wounded, which later led him to undergo an amputation. And his injuries affected his mental as well as his physical health.
In my mind, I was being a burden on my family. I was being a burden in life, so I did try to take my own life, and because of that, I don't think there's any sort of lower place you can be when that happens. So, with the help of my psychologist, Professor Zafar Iqbal, we started work on getting me better. And like I say, I still work with Zafar today with the work that he does, and I still get treatment from him today. But I also assist him in some of the work that he does with veterans and everything like that.
Coming to terms with the loss of his army career was also hard for Steve.
With a job that you love doing and you've loved doing all your life, and you've been wanting to do that since you've been a really young lad, when it's taken away from you through injury, and we addressed this, you're sort of in mourning for your career. You've absolutely lost one of the things you love doing. So it's not like when you're about to leave the military after 22 years service or after however long it is in the RAF or the Navy. It just stops there, and then your military career, you know it's over. You're never going to get back into green kit and go doing the job that you love.
Steve's a keen wheelchair rugby league player and is thrilled to be part of Team UK.
Even though the Invictus Games, wheelchair rugby, you play it with a different ball and it's slightly different, it's still pushing in a wheelchair, there's still collisions, so you still get that excitement out of it, so it's great.
The Invictus Games are all about using sport to support recovery for veterans and armed forces personnel.
We hear lots of reports back from previous competitors and current competitors about the way that they are able to develop a sense of camaraderie. They feel a sense of belonging. They're proud to wear the badge and the flag again, because obviously many are not in a position to serve. So it's critical. It's really important for many people to be able to give them the opportunity to engage in the Invictus Games experience.
So all that's left is to wish the best of luck to Team UK in the Invictus Games this September. Anna Riley, GB News.
Now, To The Point is coming up, of course, at 9:30 this morning. And today, Dawn Neeson and Emily Carver are in the hot seats. Morning, ladies.
Good
morning.
What have you got?
Morning.
Bit of girl power this morning on the Easter bank holiday. We've got some great stuff coming up.
We do have a huge amount coming up. Of course, Good Friday Agreement anniversary. We'll be covering that with lots of different people, including Arlene Foster.
Yes.
Should be interesting.
And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to talk to Arlene about, because her dad was involved in the Troubles, about what it was actually like for ordinary people on the ground, rather than just the politics, what it was like 25 years ago for the people in Northern Ireland and what they were putting up with. And also, we've got a little royal exclusive.
Oh, have you?
How Princess Diana is going to be involved in the King's coronation.
Ooh.
The late Princess Diana.
Yes.
And are you keeping tight-lipped on that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. All will be revealed. Yes,
at 9:30.
You're going to have to watch. It's very exciting. And, of course, Queen and the Ivory.
Queen and the Ivory.
Bit of a scandal.
Yeah.
Wildlife
Yeah.
activists aren't too happy, apparently.
Yeah. She's Queen Consort officially now, isn't she? She's not Queen until she's actually crowned.
Well, yeah, something like that.
But it's all
more
coming up.
controversy.
Yeah.
Yes.
To the point. There always is. To the point, 9:30 with the both of you. It's going to be great. Thank you so much.
Look forward to it. Thank
Lots
you.
to look forward to.
Now, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has said he makes absolutely zero apologies for the controversial ad campaign that has provoked anger from even within his own party.
Well, joining us now is the Shadow Attorney General, Emily Thornberry. Good morning to you, Emily. Really good to have you on the programme with us. So let's start with that, shall we? Keir Starmer refusing to apologise for those very provocative and aggressive adverts that we've seen on Twitter. The one this week accusing Rishi Sunak of not thinking child sex abusers should go to prison. We're being told that there's more provocative and aggressive adverts coming on the way about the economy. I mean, this isn't true, is it? It's no better than trolling. Really, the Labour Party looks like the nasty party at the moment.
So what I say is this, is that are there objective facts in this? Yes, there are. And can the person who you're having a go at do something about it, or are they responsible for it? Yes. Rishi Sunak is in charge of the government, and this government has been in power for 13 years, and during that time, the criminal justice system has collapsed. It is in the most terrible state. And Keir Starmer has made it he's dedicated his life to ensuring that the criminal justice system works properly. And he feels very strongly about this and is being very blunt about it. And yeah, we stand by this. If Rishi Sunak really wanted to stop child sex offenders from staying out of jail, he could do something about it, but he is not doing anything about it. They are not taking their failures seriously, and they should be doing a great deal more than they are.
Keir Starmer was on the Sentencing Review panel in 2012 when this was all discussed. I mean, some of this is down to him, isn't it?
No, it's not. Because the Sentencing Review Board, what they do is they ensure that there's consistency of sentence. That's what their job is. It is up to government to set the tone and to say what the minimum and the maximum sentences are. The Attorney General will get references if there has been an unduly lenient sentence, and the public can send complaints to the Attorney General. She can then decide whether to send a case to the Court of Appeal. During the 2 years when Suella Braverman was the Attorney General, 29 cases were sent to her of child sex abuse, and she sent only 2 of them to the Court of Appeal, even though those people had not been given immediate custodial sentences. 100 child pornographers were sent to her, and she sent, I believe, 9 to the Court of Appeal. It is disgraceful. They do not take this matter seriously, and Labour does, and Keir Starmer does, and we're going to do something about it. We cannot continue to have too few police, too few arrests, too long waits to get into court, and then when you get to court, then the judge is being told by the Lord Chief Justice to think twice about sending people to prison because the prisons are so crowded. That's how bad it is. And when people are released, they're not being supervised properly.
Let me get a word in, Emily Thornberry.
Crimes.
Let me get a word in. I mean, the point with this is, and everyone has said, you know, there are issues to be discussed here, serious issues and failings on the government's part over the last 13 years. And you said these posters have got you know, objective facts in. But what is not an objective fact is saying should child sex abusers go to prison? Rishi Sunak doesn't think so, because that's not actually a fact, is it?
The fact is that if he wanted to do something about it, he could do something about it, and he hasn't. And the Tories haven't. And the waits for going to court have got longer. And there are fewer arrests. Do you know what? If you're burgled, you have a 4% chance of your burglar being arrested and sent to court. If you are raped, there is a 1.6% chance. If you go and see the police and complain about a rape, a 1.6% chance of your case going to court. And when it does go to court, you have to wait more than 3 years. We want to talk about this. We want there to be a national debate, and we want to hold this government to account. It is the job of the opposition to hold the government to account, but particularly on this, which is so bad. And Keir Starmer feels particularly strongly about it, and so do I, quite frankly.
Are you worried, though, that this attack ad policy is going to backfire? There's a recent poll that found 57% of people say politicians should show more compassion. I just wanted to share an email that we've had in from a viewer who says Labour has lost what it stands for. It has become a party that is devoted to smears on others, not a party of relevance on policy. Is Labour misreading how you win an election?
So, you know, I would love it if we just talked about policy in a calm way and we never talked about anything else. But the truth is, during my whole time as being an MP, I have not seen that. And before I became an MP, the smears that would be thrown at the likes of Neil Kinnock or Gordon Brown, you know, were appalling, quite frankly. The truth is that you know, that leaders are responsible for the policy and for failures. You know, I remember writing an article about Liz Truss and how I hoped that if people, you know, if it was so important her being a woman leader, that she would do something about the fact that we were failing when it came to the amount of people being prosecuted for rape. But nothing happened in relation to that. Boris Johnson, as well, was another one. I mean, Boris Johnson said he was going to have an end-to-end review of rape cases and bring back rape cases back to the same levels of prosecutions that they were in 2015. And then he said it was all very difficult. And, of course, nothing was done about it. People need to be held to account for these things. You know, governments can do this stuff. And as I say, you know, Rishi Sunak can't get up in Parliament and brag about the criminal justice system and not be held to account for everything that is happening. You know, he is the leader, he is the Prime Minister. Prime Ministers should be answerable for this, and the public are angry about just how bad the criminal justice system is. You know, how many phone calls have you had, or text messages have you had, of people trying to scam you or defraud you? You know, I mean, it happens all the time, and for many of us it's just a nuisance, but for some people who are the most vulnerable, they're the ones who are getting conned out of their savings And it can ruin people's lives. And all we have is a government that shrugs its shoulders and says that it's all too hard. Well, it's not too hard. You can do something about it. And today, we're launching a policy where we are calling on the government to stop these scam calls from abroad and to stop them being allowed to be what's called spoof calls, where they claim that they've got a British telephone number when actually they're ringing from abroad. Because people don't answer the phone. If they see an international number that they don't recognise, they're more likely to see a UK number that they don't recognise and answer that. And it's that way that they get to elderly people sitting in their homes in the afternoon and try and con them out of their life savings. That's the sort of thing we should be talking about, and I'd love to talk about it today.
Well, you've just raised it, so there you go. But I mean, whereas it's a something, but where it's something people will be very concerned about, does that mean your next ad on Twitter is going to say, should you be, do you agree that you should be scammed on phone calls? Rishi Sunak does. It's about as relevant as anything else you've put out there.
There is, if people want to look out for the ad, it is out today, and it's about phone calls and phones ringing and where it is that they look like they're coming from, but actually where they are coming from, because we do need to warn people. Do you know that last week the Ministry of Justice were having to warn people that their own phone number was being used for scam calls? I mean, that's how bad it is. I mean, the irony seems to be beyond them.
OK, look, we have to leave it there, Emily Thornberry. As always, it's really good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, what do you make of it all?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, look, she makes a valid point. She makes a valid point. There are questions to be asked and answered, and are they being? But is this the way you do it?
Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But coming up, we'll meet the real-life Easter Bunny, who's donated over 10,000 Easter eggs to sick children.
You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues
with us 4 plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion,
5 times the debate.
and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5.
Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end.
I can't believe I can't
Britain's
wink,
listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Now, if, like me, you've been tucking into an Easter egg or 2...
Or 3.
Or 12, you'll understand the joy of unboxing them and cracking open the shells.
Yeah, but not everyone is spending Easter at home with family, and that's why Michael Kirkham has, for more than a decade, been collecting Easter eggs for children in hospital, and he joins us now. Good morning to you. It's an amazing and a lovely, wonderful thing to do. Why did you start doing it?
I actually started doing it 12 years ago. I used to do a lot of running when I was younger, events, and I kind of made them, so started to do Easter eggs.
Wow, it's absolutely incredible what you do, Michael. How many eggs are you collecting, and how many children are you gifting these eggs to?
We've actually just broke the 10,000 barrier this year over the 12 years. So we're delivering to lots of local charities and the local hospitals. So we're talking of 1,500 this year.
Wow.
It's a lot of eggs. So how do you get hold of them? Do you have to buy them? Do you get donations? How does it work?
I actually get donations and people actually hand them in. So going to Morrison's and etc. to empty their shelves is quite a good feat to do.
That's satisfying.
Yeah, very much, empty the whole lot.
Well, Michael, it's absolutely incredible what you do, really, really is. And you must be so warmed, really, by the generosity of others who want to donate and help you.
I'm actually very humbled by it, because every year we keep saying, we're not going to do this, we're not going to... And every year people keep breaking the barriers. I mean, during the pandemic and the living crisis, and people are still donating. Amazing.
Do you get to... what's it like when you hand the eggs over to the kids? They must be thrilled.
A relief I can get my house back, and to see the kids' faces, getting their Easter eggs is it's worth it. It's what it's worth for.
And they call you the real-life Easter Bunny, don't they?
I actually get called Easter Bunny when I'm out in the shopping. They go, "There's Easter Bunny," which is strange.
Oh, I'll tell you what, it's a lovely thing, Michael. It's a joy to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Happy Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter to you. Thanks
very much.
Thank you.
Oh, bless it.
People are amazing, aren't they?
It's really nice, yeah. Look, there you go. That's it from us this morning. Have a very happy Easter. Breakfast is back tomorrow, of course, 6 o'clock.
Yep, up next, it's Dawn and Emily with To The Point.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, welcome. It's me, Dawn Neeson, and the lovely Emily Carver are to the point this morning. Give it some real good exclusives coming up for you, including a royal one involving the late Princess Diana and Northern Ireland.
But I also want to know what's going on with why the coronation is going to be so short, the procession.
Ah, yes, indeed. All coming up to the point after the news.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain